Kickoff time for week number 2 here in February. It's our first full week of February. George Brocker with you here on the George Show, 710 KNUS. A little business first. This YouTube thing is starting to catch a little momentum here. In fact, I've just tweeted out, I don't know what you call it when you do it, Facebook, LinkedIn, and all that other stuff, our link to this video. The important reason for that is we are going to expand the ability, and it hasn't happened yet today, but I promise you it's coming, for you to watch on YouTube. And then there's a way to comment. And if you're subscribed, and only if you're subscribed, you can chime in on the comments, much like we do here through the text at 710KNUS and 710KNUS.com. You can chime in, and I am going to figure out a way to get this thing up and going where I can communicate back with you as well. Everybody except the host loves the video thing, and so we're going to continue to go that direction. If you haven't yet, go to it, subscribe to it, send it to your buddies, send it to your frenemies. Send it to your boss, but just use frankly, a fake email account to do it in case they're not a big fan, and get folks to watch this thing. Now, listen, we are, listen, I don't want to do it until we get a little bit later in the show. We have some great guests coming up today. One in particular, I think we made news here at this channel as you're accustomed to. The things that we talk about on this radio show end up showing up in other places in the media. That happened on Friday. And so we're going to have another guest back in. That's my little teaser. And they will be, of course, allowed to respond to that as well as talk about some other things related to the endeavor in which they're engaged. That's exciting stuff. But I don't really want to get too neck deep into the news balloon without asking Billy, how was the weekend and what'd you all do?
Oh, man. Hello. It was kind of a busy weekend. Had some... I think changing my volume up here a little bit. It was okay. I know everybody's worried. The snake ate, so I know that's been.
The snake ate the mouse.
Yeah, everyone's worried about. Yeah, we did live and wasn't super happy about that, but she did eat, so I'll try again. I got 3 frozen small adults, so I'll try one later this week, and we'll see if she.
And by that you mean people.
Yes, exactly. Hopefully.
You're feeding people to the snake.
Yeah, so
I think this was an Ice Cube movie called Anaconda.
Yeah,
with J-Lo.
This was it was good. It was nice, got her up. I had to hold her for a while to warm her up and make sure that she was ready to go, which you normally don't do before feeding.
Do you talk to the snake like you do to a dog? Like, who's your daddy? Who's daddy's favorite little snake?
Not the same thing, but I do talk to him. Yeah, and because snakes do have ears. They're not external, they are internal, but they can hear, and especially low vibrations. They're not good at high vibrations, but they're good at low vibrations. So, with dogs and cats, they're tuned to our higher pitched voice. When we go, "Who's a good girl?" They hear that differently, and
so you got to go Barry White with the snake.
You do, yeah. So when I walk over,
snake?
Yeah, I walk over. I'll walk over to tanks and stuff and go, "Are you ready to eat?" And I will drop the voice, and then when I talk to them, and they recognize that rumble.
Do they recognize words?
No, not at all. But they do recognize the fact that I'm close and that I am the bringer of sustenance, and they are very excited to see me.
So dogs, certainly the one that we have is a licker. Yeah. Like it's a. Yeah. Do snakes do the same thing? They come up and they're like licking your face.
Yeah.
And
they will lick you because they'll taste.
Okay.
That's because, and again, the weird thing is they taste in stereo. And that's why they have the forked tongue. Yeah, the reason they flick their tongue out is they're tasting the air, but they taste in stereo because it helps them decide left or right and where things exist.
That's amazing.
What happens when the snake tongue is flicking up and down, the reason they have those 2 prongs at the front, when they're going up and down, they actually create what are miniature tornadoes. And those little tiny tornadoes pull the sense in from the left and the right. And then based on when they bring the tongue back into the mouth, they then can tell, is it more left, more right, based on what they're smelling.
This is like bats with the sound thing.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. Exact same thing. Yeah. And the funny thing is bats make 2 different kinds of noises. Bats echolocate 2 different ways. Again, because I am a fountain of useless knowledge.
Jeez, buddy, this is incredible. Like I picture you poring over encyclopedias as a kid.
I did that. The bats will echolocate 2 different ways. You either have grunters or honkers. And you either have, I'm just being
I
silly.
do both, honestly.
But they either will echolocate using their vocal cords or they'll echolocate using their nose. And you can tell based on looking at the bat if they are a nose honker or if they're a growler. And you can tell either way based on the facial structure. And that will tell you how they actually echolocate. But those are 2 ways that bats echolocate. It's either through the nose or through the mouth. Yeah, sorry.
Buddy,
I know.
There's another segment we have to have called Billy's Nature Walk or something like that. Or
this volume of useless crap that is in this cranium.
I know, but it could really,
ridiculous.
It could carry us for segments,
honestly.
I
have trouble with basic math, and that's the crap that
we've got segments upcoming that are like Billy's parenting tips.
Yeah.
Nature with Billy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Exactly.
There's so much stuff there. So that was the weekend was caught up with a lot of feeding the snakes stuff.
Had to do some cleaning around the house. We watched the first episode of Last of Us, which was fantastic.
Yeah.
That was wonderful. Did the next episode of Poker Face.
Yeah, I did that too. Yep, and that was a great one to turn me on to. Thank you.
And you're welcome. And I did an adventure yesterday. I finally decided we have a gift that we had gotten since Christmas. Haven't opened it. We've been debating. Do we take it back? Do we not take it back?
This is going to make you heavier.
Yes, it is. And finally, nobody in the house, my wife, hasn't made the initiative yet to take this thing back. And she is an initiative person. So I kind of take that as go ahead, enjoy your wonderful frozen treats. So
here we go.
So yesterday, now it has to, I'll let you know how it tastes because we're making blueberry gelato, but there's an entire process. Yeah.
You guys get super aggressive early. Like I would have started with just straight up vanilla, right? Like you start easy.
I don't do that. I'm like, it's like learning how to paint. Can we do the Mona Lisa today?
Right. Let's start right there. And I'm going to do it with my toe.
Yeah, exactly. So it's different. It takes, heavy cream and whole milk and sugar, and you have to bring it to kind of a boil, and then you'll wait for it to thicken, and then you put some cornstarch in, and then you add the blueberries that you puree along with some blueberry jam. And
this sounds like a 2-minute process.
It took a while, and so it has to sit in the fridge. Although Genius here didn't do that thing, that test you have like in 8th grade where it says it's got like 17 things and you have to read all the things that follow all the directions. Yeah. And at the end, it just says sign your name and you're done. Yeah. Genius here failed that test again because I'm getting all the way. And I looked through most of the instructions. I only went about 2/3 of the way through. I didn't notice that after you make the blueberry stuff, it's got to sit for at least 2 hours in the fridge, and I wasn't planning on that. So we had to let it sit overnight. Yeah, because I was trying to make it last night at like 7. So that's not going to work. Yeah. So we couldn't do that. So it's sitting in the
my takeaway here is that there's going to be more of you to love.
Oh yeah, it's gonna be
Billy
great.
will become Big Billy here.
I figured out
pretty soon.
We can make ice cream, frozen yogurt, and gelato with this thing. So we are going on a culinary adventure. And I started with blueberry gelato simply because I needed to go get heavy cream and milk. That was it. We didn't have whole milk. We didn't have heavy cream. But I had the sugar. I had the cornstarch. I had a lot of blueberries, and I had blueberry jam. So that was why I went that direction first out of the gate. So that was the reason.
This feels like this could end up becoming a parody of a song that begins with... Two turtle doves and a partridge.
Yeah, I can't wait. There are certain things that I've been looking at recipes all weekend, and I'm like
meat ice cream. Bacon flavored ice cream.
There are some that are.
Is it possible?
There's like a peanut butter and chocolate one you can do, and I'm looking at is
once you stick your chocolate in my peanut butter, it's a whole different game, my friend.
And there's a coffee one too that I'm looking
at. Well, we're gonna have to see how this turns out. These are the kinds of things. I don't even know if it's possible to transport it, but at some point you're gonna have to visit that on the office. Yeah,
I will definitely try.
Listen, in terms of weather, folks, and I forgot to do that at the top of the hour. I'm only going to alert you to the good stuff that you need to know. Today, they are now predicting flurries, few flurries, 42 degrees. Now, here's the difference. 1 degree. That seems consistent. Where they've really changed gears here is by the time you get to Wednesday, if you'll recall Friday, our meteorologist friends at 7 News said that Wednesday would be 47 degrees and mostly sunny. Something happened. When they rolled the bones last night, they came up with a different thing. They said now Wednesday is going to be a rain and snow mix, and yet 3 degrees warmer. I don't know how they did that. Chance of flurries on Thursday. That's another big change. They said 38 degrees. That's a 7 degrees downward departure from their prediction on Friday. Again, I am still baffled by this. And I think before the show, Billy and I talked about there's another aspect of this weather thing that touches upon a current event story. And that is, of course, China's spy balloon thing that we'll talk about later on, but it feels like weather factors into that potentially as well. Now, for the weekend, for me, I had some Army business, so I really missed out on all the really cool stuff like Graham's basketball team, which I've described lovingly as the Island of Misfit Toys. This is the group of kids who hadn't been with their team for years like everyone else they played, and they kind of came together in a very Bad News Bears-like way. They added Kelly, and then Tatum O'Neal becomes the pitcher and all that stuff. And They were the second to the bottom seed going into the game. They won in the last 8 seconds of their first game with the shot. Yeah. And then they played the number 1 seed, which of course were the rich kids from Cherry Creek.
Yeah.
And held them to a season low, but ended up losing, I think, 31-19 or something. Wow. So the defense was good, but the offense just wasn't there. So that season is over. Much to the joy. And again, if Graham's listening, Graham, I love watching you participate in all sports at all times. But the fact that we don't have to drive to Ben Franklin Academy at 7:30 at night, that's a win for your parents. I'm just saying that is a huge win.
It's
for Mom and Dad.
That I hope Graham understands the enormous win that he has had through the course of this season.
Oh, yeah.
Because of, imagine those first couple of practices that Graham had with the boys and how disorganized, how they weren't really even a team, how they were trying to figure out how to play. And now at the end of the season, they not only win a game being one of the lowest seeds in the tournament, but then hold the number 1 seed to the lowest offensive output of the season.
I know, that's huge.
That is enormous because that same team, that number 1 seed, also has been playing and getting better all season.
Oh, those guys were really good too.
They have also experienced that gradual increase of ability and teamwork. Graham's team came and brought it.
Now you make me feel even better about that. Thank you.
That is something that he has got to really hold that. That is a challenge moment in which he's got to hang on to that for, as he's going through athletics and going through school, that he knows what he's capable of, that he can start from 0 and then go toe to toe with the best at the end of the season.
I also, and those are all things I hadn't really given a lot of thought to, but I also think there is value in learning how to lose with class and then taking, what are your takeaways? Like I asked, I didn't get to see any of the games, which just breaks my heart, but I asked him afterwards on the ride home. I called him and said, "Man, what were your takeaways? How'd you do?" And he said, "I thought in the first game, I played great defense. I didn't score." He said, "In the second game, I made a lot of bad passes." And I love to hear him talk in those terms because this is a kid who can analyze defeat and take ownership of the things that he thinks he could have controlled and done better. I love that for a 13-year-old boy. And then the following day, which is yesterday, I missed this. This is a horrible story.
Yeah.
He went to a wrestling tournament. They have them every weekend during the wrestling season. Would have gone to one on Saturday, but it overlapped with basketball. So yesterday at Alameda, they call it Alameda International High School. I don't know what makes it international, but nonetheless, Alameda International High School.
All the pancakes?
It is IHOP for education.
Yeah.
As a Jeffco kid, we played against I was a Bear Creek kid. We played against Alameda all the time. So he's in a wrestling tournament out there. It starts at 9. Dad used his lunch hour to drive perhaps very close to the speed limit.
Never over.
And never over much. And then I pulled that lunch hour earlier in the morning to try to get over there to see him. I rushed to the gate. And by the gate, I mean the table there. They charge you $3 to get in. I run into the small gym there, and there's, I can't tell you how many kids are wrestling there, but they had the full gym. The big gym was full. The small gym was full. I rush in to find him lacing up his regular shoes. And I'm like, "What happened?" And he's like, "I lost in the championship round." For first place, he lost in the first place round to a kid that the week before when I was there, they had gone 1-1. He had to wrestle this kid twice. Beat him in the first round, ultimately lost to him 3 rounds later for third place. But yesterday, he lost to him to take second. And it was, again, he was in good spirits because he felt like there were things he'd improved on. This kid is a nice kid. His dad came over. He's a firefighter from Fort Collins, and we chatted a little bit. Seems like a good kid from a good family, but we want to beat him again. And I think that they've got this natural little rivalry going.
Oh,
but
that's great.
So Dad missed all the competition this weekend. And then I don't know. It was just doing the Army thing is a blessing. But this weekend was so intensive with administrative stuff that you have to do. It was just like I wanted to stab myself in the face. I mean, like, computer driven administrative stuff where you're like, sweet mother of goodness, like, oh my God. But you got to get it done. Now, the Army runs on paperwork, as anyone who's served in the military knows, and they're not good at it. And even though they've taken that paperwork and put it into digital format, it hasn't improved how good they are at it. It's just now it's just digital. I mean, the amount of security you go through, I feel like the Chinese aren't trying to get into my emails because they're already on my phone with TikTok. They don't need to get into my emails. You have to give blood to get into your email account. There's a special device they have now that reads your DNA.
And a small cup you have to pee in.
Takes about 10 minutes. They do the pee test, and then you can get into your email.
Oh, good.
Nonetheless. So otherwise, it was a great weekend. The weather was good. I wish I could have availed myself of more of it, but that's where we're at, man. Listen, here's what we're going to do. This is a good time to give Billy as much runway as possible for the next segment. As you know, if you're a regular to the show, and if you're not, welcome. If you are, welcome back. The most produced, most beloved portion of the show, the portion that people miss the most when I'm out of the saddle, is, of course, the Thorpe Report, where you get caught up on all the good stuff. That's the real news. And then the realer news that really brings you back down to earth is the You Choose the News. And I don't like to rush through that because that's the good stuff. We're going to get to that in a little bit. And then I will tell you, we've got a big show coming up today. There's one particular hour I think you got to pay particular attention to, although all the hours are good. In the 7 o'clock at the top, we'll have Kathleen Chandler on. If you'll remember, about a week ago, we had texters calling in and texting in, actually, and saying, hey, how do we participate here in the government piece of this? Because we were talking about all the different boards and commissions and municipal races and stuff that are coming up. Kathleen Chandler is the Rosetta Stone for that convoluted, ridiculous process. She's going to make us smarter about it, get you more active in terms of trying to govern our lives instead of turning it over to the left-wing politicos out there. And then in the 8 o'clock hour, Andy Rougeot. We had Andy on last week, and for a great first interview. He is running for mayor. He's maybe the only candidate running on the right of center or center-right part of the political spectrum for mayor. And that interview turned into another story on another news outlet, and we're going to give Andy a chance to come back and give some thoughts on that, as well as talk about a debate that they're hosting that they are excluding him from and why. But again, we can't get to any of that till we get through the very, very good and exciting stuff, and that is, of course, the Thorpe Report and You Choose the News. Couple texts coming in. And by the way, folks, as you know, I respond to texts. I read some of them on air, like this right here. Every time I drive by kids playing on a soccer field when it's very cold or very hot, I don't miss kids' sports. And I really don't miss it on holiday weekends. Loved watching my kids, but don't miss all the time commitment. I get it, Alexa, I do. But I will tell you now, with one kid, well, Jeff does fencing, and I still go to all that stuff. I love that. But really, with one kid left who does the outdoor stuff, I'm telling you, I just have a different perspective in my 90s here, where as much as it is a pain, I cherish being able to drive him to and from things, talk to him about it, watch him compete. And I know I'm going to miss the hell out of it until I get little grandkids, and then I can be that guy for dad. And then, listen, something else. It's big. And I didn't ask you to do this, Billy, but maybe we're able to get him out of bed before noon. Steffan Tubbs celebrated his 5-year anniversary. And I think it marks his 5th year of freedom since being released from custody. And I'm not sure. And I think he was actually being held in a juvenile detention facility despite his advanced age, which is really awkward. But nonetheless, Steffan Tubbs, 5 years on 710 KNUS. That's crazy. And then later on this month, according to our official, unofficial historian, I will crest the 3-year mark, which seems impossible. It's impossible to imagine that has been true, but we'll see if we can't get Steffan on the show to let him do a victory lap here, because 5 years, I think under Salem employment rules, he's entitled to something made of tinfoil, and I don't know what that is. I don't know if he's going to go origami with that or choose some sort of a reheatable food item, but that's a big accomplishment for our guy, Steffan. The FCC clearly not listening in the 4 to 7 hour. He would have been gone on day 5, let alone year 5. Hey, listen, stick around, folks. We're getting to the good stuff next. George Brockwood on the George Show, 710 KNUS. George Brocker back with you here, 710 KNUS, a little Mellencamp right there. I can't remember if that's when he was a cougar or not, but always good to listen to a little JCM. We've got that part of the show right now that you've been waiting for. If you haven't pulled over to the side of the road, now is your chance, unless you're like on a bridge or maybe a road with no shoulder. That could be a problem. Because get ready, folks, unbuckle that belt, get comfortable, close your eyes, and listen to the sultry sounds of the Thorpe Report, and you choose the news. William?
Good morning. Yes, put on those maternity pants. We're about to give you all the news you can fit in your delicious little belly. Now, George was talking about it earlier. We got snow that's going to develop in the northern mountains and continue throughout the day today. National Weather Service has issued a winter weather advisory until 11 o'clock tonight. 5 to 10 inches expected in the high country. But for here in Denver and across the Front Range, we've got light snow. Cooler conditions can be expected. Snow accumulations are going to be absolutely minor. Temps are going to be into the upper 30s to low 40s. Skies are going to clear by tomorrow. Weather is going to be mild and dry on Wednesday. And another weak storm is going to move into Colorado late on Wednesday and early Thursday. Colder weather. A little bit of light snow. Skies will clear again on Friday. Colorado State University has apologized to a Utah State basketball player of Ukrainian descent after some fans were heard chanting Russia during a game between the Aggies and the Rams at Moby Arena on Saturday night. Utah State's Matt Shluga from Kiev was shooting free throws at Saturday's game in Fort Collins, and chanting could even be heard during the game's broadcast coming from the student section during the last 40 seconds of the game. A teacher at a Catholic school in Inglewood has been fired because she violated her contract by being in a same-sex relationship. That's according to the Archdiocese of Denver. All Souls Catholic School was home for Maggie Barton. She said she loved teaching her students about technology and media. She was in her 6th year of teaching there when the school decided to let her go. The Archdiocese of Denver says the Catholic school employees wouldn't be terminated for being attracted to other people of the same sex, but when you get into a relationship, that's something different. According to the church, every teacher in the Archdiocese signs a contract, and in the agreement, they promise to, quote, personally exemplify the characteristics of Catholic living, which include refraining from taking any public position or conducting themselves in a manner that is contrary to the teachings of the church. The Archdiocese said that All Souls Catholic School was made aware that one of their teachers was in this kind of a relationship. The church said that Barton violated the terms of the employment agreement, and she was fired in January.
You know, it's, and you know this, Billy, because you're right there with me. It's not about the sinner, who the church always accepts. It's about the sin. And again, I'm not suggesting that this is some sort of an evil thing. I'm just saying the church is like, listen, we'll accept everybody. But if these things are contrary to what we're saying to do and you do them, you put us in a tough spot here.
Yeah. And for me, it's a private school. They can make those rules. And so as long as they are reasonable, and this seems to be a reasonable rule, that's okay. So, yeah. And she knew it going in. And that's unfortunate. That's unfortunate that she knew this and didn't make the choice in order to find a different place to be employed, because she then impacts her students. And it's awful for both her because it's tearing her away from the kids in the middle of the year, and it's awful for the students as well. But she could have avoided this because, again, she's an adult. She knows who she's attracted to, and she was open when she got into the relationship. That was all a choice that she made.
One of those things,
and that's okay. She can make that choice. I will support her in that choice.
And to be clear,
I won't support her in keeping the job that she signed a contract.
We would never do this in a public school, and we wouldn't tolerate it.
No, and that's okay. And that's the difference between the two, and they're okay doing that. So I really am I'm disappointed in her, honestly, in this entire story, because she had the ability to make a different choice. And that would be to go find another place of employment. I'm not telling you not to deny your love or anything else. No, go right ahead. You do you.
Well, and I imagine because of this story, she will. There'll be some other school that reaches out and says, hey, we don't care about this. Come and teach for us. And I hope she takes her passion there.
I hope so. I really hope so. So elsewhere up in Greeley, police are looking for a hit-and-run driver after a fatal collision that happened on Saturday night. A 53-year-old male pedestrian was struck and killed in the intersection of 35th Avenue and 4th Street. Happened just after 8 o'clock in the evening. Police are looking for the driver of a black four-door pickup truck, possibly a Dodge Ram 1500, who sped off southbound along 35th Avenue.
You should also remember, folks, if you're remember from the past, and I'll remind you this every time Billy has one of these stories, Colorado has ridiculously weak laws in this area. That right there is a probation eligible charge that is punishable at most by 12 years in the Department of Corrections, which really spends more like 4 years when you consider all the earned time, good time. I've colored a bunch of coloring books time. We simply don't care if you run over someone with your car and drive away.
Yeah, and drive away. That's the real key there, too, is the fact that you run away from the scene.
Gutlessness.
And then it's like, we don't care. And finally, nearly 8 months after a truck driver slammed into a car on I-25, killing a family, the company that put the driver on the road without proper license is losing its primary customer. The United States Postal Service is now saying they are in the process of terminating their contract with the trucking company, which was involved in 2, not 1, but 2 fatal crashes in the past 2 years.
Did they drive away from it?
I know. Did they? That's what we want to know. And speaking of driving away from awful things that happen, yes, it is that time again for we have the human version of a traffic calamity. We are going to play You Choose the News, America's favorite radio news game show. We have scoured the interweb to find really stupid things us humans have done and give them even more ridiculous headlines. Why? Well, because we are paid to play the game. Yes, we are sponsored today a brand new book. We will talk about a new title that can help you discover some immense culinary adventurous dishes, and you just have to wait and see. But first, we have to play the game. All righty, sir. Here are your choices. Headline number 1, couldn't they run after him? Headline number 2, lost junk. Headline number 3, restaurant is a hidden gem. And headline number 4, really hot wings. All righty, sir. Your choices again this morning are couldn't they run after him? Lost junk. Restaurant is a hidden gem. And really hot wings.
Really hot wings, because I love them.
Really hot wings. We're going to go to Cook County and talk to a bunch of prosecutors because they have arrested Vera Liddell. She worked as the director of food services at Harvey School District 152, and she is now facing felony charges of a theft upwards of $1 million. Yes, the director of food services is accused of embezzling $1.5 million in taxpayer funds over a 19-month period.
Dang, that's a good job.
Yes. Now, how did she do this?
How'd she do it?
Well, prosecutors allege that Liddell placed hundreds of unauthorized orders for food items, particularly chicken wings, with the district's main supplier. When she placed these orders separate from the district's legitimate orders, they billed the school district for the items, believing that she was authorized to make the purchases on behalf of the school district. She then went out there and sold the wings on the black market.
No, black market wings are the best.
Yes, I know. I just keep looking at this. So basically more than 11,000 cases of chicken wings is what she embezzled in 19 months.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm just thinking 19 months, 11,000 cases. I'm bad at math, but
how many wings are in a case, do we know?
I don't know. But
There's math. There's got to be hundreds of thousands of wings.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And I just think that, when she's hatching your scheme. I found the weakness in the system. That's right. The chicken wings. They will never find me in this clever plan.
Who figured this out 18 or whatever months later?
I don't know. I mean, sooner or later.
Someone's like, dang, they
here it is.
a lot of wings.
The school's district business manager conducted an audit and discovered, hey, the department exceeded its budget by about $300,000.
Yeah, like kids, do you remember eating a lot of wings last year?
Exactly.
Was that a big item on the tray?
Yeah. Was that like
hey, kids,
Wing Friday or something?
Another
like
version
that?
Of wings.
Yeah,
congrats.
Wings every day. All right, your second choice this morning. Couldn't they run after him? Lost junk or restaurant is a hidden gem.
I just don't know if it's a double entendre or lost junk.
Lost junk. Okay, here we are going to go to Mobile, Alabama, and the Mobile
I
Police
already
Department.
know it's going to be good.
They think they're actually looking for a victim because shortly after 6 a.m. last Monday, there was some junk found in the parking lot of a gas station. Yes, in Mobile. Someone misplaced their penis.
No, they can't do that. You can't.
Yes. A human penis was found in the parking lot of the Alabama gas station in Mobile around 6 a.m. on Monday morning. The police department confirmed that the appendage was located at the gas station and is not related to a murder or an assault. It's odd how they would try to figure that out. Reportedly, the gas station worker was the one that discovered the missing member, massive manhood. I ran out of alliteration there. But they think that what could have happened was there was recently, right in that area, a 29-year-old died after losing control of his motorcycle and then being hit by multiple vehicles. And they think that maybe they didn't find all the pieces of him once he went kablooey. So that's the idea. Police didn't say how maybe the appendage arrived there. They are going to look through a surveillance video, which, that's going to be a fun job. Hi, I'm looking for the surveillance video because I got to find the missing. Yeah, so exactly.
I feel like that's a nightmare that you have. Like when you wake up and you're like, I can't find it.
I just keep thinking of the gas station worker. Dude's making minimum wage. It's a crappy job. And he's walking around. And he's like, is that Oh, damn it. I've got to have the,
between this and the 30-inch dildo theft that you talked about last week, where are you finding these stories, Billy?
Oh, and believe me,
this is not CNN.
No, it isn't. And there's some that don't make the cut because they're even more uncomfortable. There's some that are just like,
where are you trolling? Is this like Penthouse Forum?
It is really bad. And I have to delete my search history, and I cannot do it here. And that's why.
Oh, my goodness.
Alrighty. So your final choice this morning. Couldn't they run after him, or restaurant is a hidden gem?
Couldn't they run after him?
Yeah. Couldn't they run after him? That is the question that people are asking the Huntington Park Police Department in California after they had an encounter with Anthony Lowe Jr. He's a 36-year-old father of 2. Now, police claim that Mr. Lowe had just stabbed somebody unprovoked and was trying to run from the officers when they had to open fire on him, killing him.
Oh,
yes,
whoa,
they killed him. But here's the interesting part about this. The officers were afraid that he was going to hurl the butcher knife that he was carrying at him. Now, in the clip, Mr. Lowe can be seen jumping and taking the knife with him, and officers attempt to tase him. Didn't go very well. The officers continued to draw their guns and continued the pursuit. A second police officer arrives, carrying a car arrives, carrying a third police officer. Within 15 seconds of the officer arriving, they fire multiple shots, shooting Mr. Lowe in the upper torso, and he falls to the ground, and then he's handcuffed and he dies on the scene. The interesting thing about this is, again, they were worried he was going to throw the knife at him, and they were worried about him attempting to flee. Problem is that Mr. Lowe, when he got up and jumped, he jumped out of his wheelchair. Mr. Lowe doesn't have any legs.
What?
Yes.
This isn't like Eddie Murphy Trading Places.
No, not at all. No, he doesn't have any legs, and yet he literally was running away from him on his stumps, and they had to shoot him.
That doesn't seem right.
It doesn't. It doesn't seem right at all. It doesn't seem right.
Please tell me there's a video.
Yeah, there is, and it's not good. It's not good at all.
Oh boy,
I've seen the video. It's not good. Now, again, Mr. Lowe is not a nice person. We are gonna have this
the butcher knife kind of
he's not necessarily a good dude because recently, you know how Mr. Lowe lost the lower half of both of his legs?
Nope.
It was another altercation with police in Texas.
What? They shot his legs off?
Yeah, no, I don't know exactly all the details. I haven't been able to find them yet. But so he has had numerous run-ins with the police, one of which cost him his legs. So I'm just saying this may not be the most upstanding member of our society.
And again,
however,
I don't want to take anything away from the tragedy that is the loss of human life. And yet I am reminded of the scene from Monty Python and the Quest for the Holy Grail with the knight who keeps losing. It's just a flesh wound.
Black Knight. Yeah.
Yeah. This is the Black Knight. He's got the butcher knife and he's, it's just a flesh wound.
I know. And even then, if he turns and just hurls the knife at, unless he is some sort of Shaolin ninja, he's not going to throw the knife and stab you in the heart. It's not.
It would freak me out if someone threw a butcher knife at me. I'll be honest with you. But I guess we're going to have to reevaluate how and when we pull the trigger, because
that's the thing I got out of this one. And the other part is this, is I go back to it, even that when they were thinking about, oh my God, he's going to throw a knife at us. I go back to the movie Dodgeball. If you can dodge a wrench, you can dodge a ball. So the idea of, come on.
Thank you, Rip Torn.
Do they need wrench training or something? And that, I don't know what it is, but it's like, come on, guys. If you go, whoop,
isn't the greatest torture, though, is let this guy run away stump away from you? And I mean, that's got to hurt the dickens.
It's got to really hurt.
And you just let him run, and you just stay about 10 feet behind him as he continues to run. And
I mean, basically you have to walk fast.
And instead they wasted it.
Yeah. You're like, hey, I'm getting in my steps. I'm the target heart rate.
They have cut short his ability to redeem himself. So I don't know.
You said cut short.
That was unintentional. I mean, that was totally intended.
And that is the end of You Choose the News. Yes, as always, George is our perennial winner, and I'm your big loser. But today, Barnes & Noble is giving you a chance to buy their new cookbook. It is just hitting shelves today. Yes, it is hard out there. We all know the tighter budgets, inflation, gas prices, eggs at the store. It is getting ridiculous. So yes, you can enjoy the brand new cookbook, 101 Ways to Prepare Roadkill. Yes, it will show you how to scrape the roadkill up off of the ground. Also, how do you know if it's really ripe? How long has it been there? Deep fry, Instapot, and broil. You have 101 ways to make sure that your precious dollars go further, and hopefully you don't get any weird diseases. All right, back to you, sir.
Well, the fingers crossed culinary approach is the way to go. I'm interested to see how they deal with Trash Panda, which I'm wearing that hat, by the way. Listen, folks, this isn't a sponsor yet of the Thorpe Report or You Choose the News, but we're working in that direction. And that's our good buddies at Twin Aspen Dental Center. If you have not heard me praise them, it's because typically I do it later in the show, but we wanted to move it around here so that you get the chance. When you think of health, of course, you think of you think of your mouth first, because everything you're putting in your body, hopefully, is through that hole right there. The best way to improve your health is preventative dentistry. And these folks right here at Twin Aspen Dental, and let me be clear, they're my dentists. That's who I go to. In fact, I think this month I have another trip. It's either this month or next. I have another trip to go see them so they can do all the preventative stuff that I love that they do that keeps me healthy enough to do this show. They have done something super awesome, and that has come up with a reduced fee dental membership plan. In this day and age, when inflation has gone bonkers, and this is another story, we're going to get crushed with assessed property values that are going to make us even more incensed at what we've done in removing, in my opinion, the Gallagher Amendment that we used to have. This reduced fee dental membership plan is the way to go. It includes 2 cleanings. That's how many you need every year. 2 routine exams. Boom. All necessary x-rays. Hopefully the one you won't need is the emergency exam, and 1 fluoride application for the kids under the age of 18. And you get 25% off all. That's every one of them. Dental services. Take that first step towards keeping your great smile and maybe even making it just a little bit better. I love these guys because they're just so nice. They're subject matter experts in the dentistry and preventative dental disease stuff. And their staff, their long-term staff, they're just great folks. And they're local. That's what I like. Stroh Ranch is not too far away. Stroh Road and Parker Road, just by Lehman Academy. It's a fantastic facility, so easy to get to from anywhere in the metro area, and frankly, worth the drive. You can check them out at twinaspendentalcenter.com. That's Twin Aspen Dental Center, 4 words at actasone.com. Or you give them a call and just set up that appointment, 303-841-7466, 303-841-7466. When we come back, developing story, huge catastrophe in Turkey and Syria, a giant set of earthquakes, 7.8 and 7.6. We'll update you on the news that we have available when we come back. George Brockler on The George Show, 710 KNUS. George Brockler back with you here at 710 KNUS. They are 10 hours ahead of us, so it is 4:51 in the PM in Turkey and Syria. And just a couple hours ago, something horrible happened here, and I want to play this briefing real quick, and we'll get to the other clip.
Over 600 are now reported to have been killed after the quake that was centered in south-central Turkey and felt as far away as Lebanon and Israel. Multiple aftershocks have rocked the region and numerous buildings have been destroyed. Rescuers have been desperately scrambling to search for survivors, with thousands of people already known to have been injured. I'm Mark Mayfield.
Another plea for help.
We need help. We need the international community to do something to help us, to support us.
Now, listen, here's the update so far, and I'm going off of what's online. There's some really incredible video and pictures. Like, I'm looking at one right now on the NewYorkTimes.com. It just happened to be the first thing that popped up. And there's a building that is just gone. It is reminiscent of what the Trade Center looked like when it went down, but it's surrounded by other, it looks like residential condominium style buildings. And there's one in the middle that's just, it's not there anymore. It's just a pile of rubble. So here's what happened at about 4:17 a.m. A 7.8 earthquake. That's a big one, folks. There aren't too many that you've heard of that are that big. Struck in the area. It was felt as far away as Cyprus, Egypt, Israel, and Lebanon. And then shortly after that, a second 7.5 magnitude earthquake struck southeastern Turkey about 9 hours later on Monday afternoon. That's just very, very recently. I'm looking at some other pictures. And this again is from online here. It says the initial earthquake, 4:17 a.m., 7.8 quakes can be far stronger, experts said. But what matters more than the numerical magnitude, and I'm reading this off of NewYorkTimes.com, is the relative strength combined with location. Whether many people live nearby, and the depth, or whether a quake is shallow enough to impact a wide area. There was a 34% chance of between 100 and 1,000 fatalities. Right now, folks, they're at 1,600, and that number is expected to climb. There is a 31% chance, according to the USGS, that's the United States Geological Survey, folks, of between 1,000 and 10,000 fatalities. Extensive damage is probable, and the disaster is likely widespread. It estimated economic losses of as much as 1% of Turkey's gross domestic product. Folks, that is catastrophic. That is enormous. And if you consider what's going on in Turkey and Syria in terms of the economics, this is devastating. And it's frankly going to take a world response. Maybe some of the question here is, and Turkey has been an on-again, off-again provocative, I'm not even sure I want to use the word ally, but partner in many things. We rely upon them for a lot, including things like some tangential assistance with what's going on in Ukraine. Their geographic location is critical for us. Syria, as you know, has been far less than an ally or a partner. They have been a provocateur, not only with Israel and Iraq. I mean, I remember being up in Mosul at Camp Meres. And that was very, very close to the Syrian border. And they were provocative even then. And of course, they're very interested in seeing the end of Israel. They have become an area in which Russia and the United States have contended over influence for a long time. And Russia probably has the leg up in Syria. They have been guarantors of certain amount of protection. They have provided some troops training and military material to them. And the question is, what does the world do to respond? Is this an opening for Russia? Is this an opening for America and the West? Listen, there are people there that are clearly in need of help. And I don't know how we condition that help upon access or some other thing, but these folks aren't going to make it just through assistance with Russia. And we probably shouldn't let that happen either. This is an incredible disaster of epic proportions that we just don't know. Some of the pictures here are just ridiculous in terms of the loss of life, a real human tragedy unfolding. And I'm sure as we get more information, we'll share that with you. Listen, when we come back, we're going to shift and go a little bit of local here with our buddy Kathleen Chandler from the Independence Institute. She'll make us smarter on some stuff. We'll have conversations after that. 8 o'clock hour, Denver mayoral candidate Andy Rougeot. We've made news last week. We'll continue to make it this week. Stick around to hear how. It's George Brockler on The George Show, 710 KNUS.
Want to take your favorite radio station wherever you go? Well, now there's an app for that. No matter where you are, stream your favorite shows. Tap the app to listen to podcasts. Talk back to your favorite local hosts.
At the tone, leave a message.
Call the show. Set your alarm. Enter contests and win prizes. All in the palm of your hand. Available now for iOS and Android devices in the App Store or Google Play. And best of all, it's free. Download today.
It sounds like Mellencamp Monday right here on the George Brockler Show, 710 KNUS, back with you. And I want to apologize. I have once again misled you. And instantly after signing off for that first hour of the show, Billy comes in and goes, Kathleen's not at 7. She's at 8:45. And I instantly realized I'm a moron. Maybe it's Moron Monday with Mellencamp. I don't know, but clearly I've misled you. So if you thought you were going to hear Kathleen Chandler make us a lot smarter, you're going to have to wait just a little bit longer, but that's okay. Here's some of the news of the day. The death toll is up over 1,800 now. I don't know what to predict here. It sounds like we're going to hit north of 2,000 or more for this catastrophe in Turkey and Syria. And if you're just tuning in, earlier today, actually earlier yesterday for us, earlier today for them, they're 10 hours ahead. There was a 7.8 earthquake on the Richter scale there. And then there was a second one that followed some hours later at 7.5. That is a ridiculously large earthquake. And they're just buildings leveled, things crushed in the street. I imagine that today's news will be overwhelmed with that human loss of life. That could just catastrophe. Pretty significant in that area, and it's going to require a pretty big response from the world to try to help them out. And I don't want to turn this into a geopolitical, tactical discussion here, but honestly, this could be a good in for the West and America in particular to try to make inroads with Turkey. And as you know, their leader, not a super Democrat guy, and by that I mean democracy guy, and probably has some human rights issues that are pretty significant. But this may be an opportunity to make some inroads there, as well as with Syria, who has been a thorn in our side in a couple different areas, including that region in general. I mean, they butt up against Jordan. They definitely butt up. No fans at all of Israel. They have sort of courted Russia. Russia has courted them. Got some real issues there in Syria. This may be an opportunity for us to make a difference, but it's going to take taxpayer money. I'm just not sure if folks think we ought to invest in that. Is this another one of those, for the folks that are out there saying Ukraine is a European issue, they should address this. They should try to thwart one of the largest militaries on the planet Earth without our assistance. Is this one of those two? Like, well, this isn't our business. This should be something that the people in that region deal with. This is a Turkey-Syria issue. I don't know if you feel like that or not, but listen, the best ways to reach out to us are on the text. I got a ton of them coming in this morning. And then also, and you can do that, by the way, on the app or 710knus.com. The bestest way to talk with us is the phone lines. That's the conversation that we have that makes us different, in my opinion, than just about anything that's offered out there in the Denver metro area. There are talk shows that are literally just them talking at you or to you. They may have the occasional interview, but they engage listeners, I don't know, once a morning or something. That just isn't this show. This show thrives on listener interaction. And frankly, if they told me I could do a show or offered me the opportunity to do a show that was without listener involvement, I wouldn't want to do it. Listen, I love to hear me talk because, of course, I think I have some really incredible insights on things to say. I'm joking. But I really wouldn't want to do this show without you. It just doesn't make any sense to me. If I could have the biggest listenership in the world, but I had to conduct a show like some of the big guys do, I'm not interested. I need to have that listener interaction. That's what makes me go. That's what makes this show go. And that's what makes us different than everything else out there. So if you just want to be talked at, you're going to be disappointed. I'm not interested. If you want to talk to or with, 303-696-1971. That's the way to go. Now, the other big news of the weekend, because it's a developing story, is there's something about a balloon. I don't know if you've heard about this at all. I'm joking. But there was a Chinese surveillance balloon, and people call it the spy balloon. That's fine, too. That was spotted by regular old human beings, regular old Americans flying over Montana. And this was at the end of last week. And there was this incredible discussion that started to develop about, one, how did it happen? And what do we need to do about it? And the Biden administration and the president had come out and said this. I asked the military to take this thing out, but only when it was over the coast of North Carolina, when it had cleared any possibility of resulting in some sort of debris falling on top of people or buildings here in America, and it was taken down. Now, that decision was not without some considerable controversy. There are some in the Democrat Party who voiced some concerns about this, but really it was the Republicans who capitalized on it. I listened to Tom Cotton on Fox News on Sunday talk about this, and he brought up some very, very interesting points about this, specifically that we should have and likely did know about this balloon by the time it left China. Like, our surveillance capabilities are too good to have not known that this thing was launched. It's 3 buses large, and I imagine that's in diameter. And Tom Cotton, who's senator from Arkansas, his point was, and military guy, by the way, deployer to, I think, Afghanistan and maybe even Iraq too. His point was, we should have shot this thing down over the Aleutian Islands or somewhere around there once it had cleared that sort of international space and crested over into American airspace. We should have dropped it then. Why didn't we? And I think the more important question that comes out of this is, when did the Biden administration know the balloon was in American airspace, and why did it wait so long until it brought it forward to America? And the reason that's important is because it looks more and more like they would not have rushed to reveal this to the American people, except for the fact that civilians in Montana had alerted the press to it and said, hey, we're going to report on this. And then the Biden administration quickly ran forward and said, hey, everybody, there's some type of a surveillance balloon that we know is from China that's over American territory. That is very, very disturbing. And the suggestion is this, and Tom Cotton captured it pretty succinctly, and I think well. As you know, Anthony Blinken, who is the Secretary of State, was supposed to go to China for one of these bridging the gap type sessions where it was going to be, hey, we're turning the page, we're resetting the relationship, whatever that State Department voodoo speak is they engage in from time to time. He was scheduled to do that last week, at the end of last week. And I think what Tom Cotton's suggestion is, hey, look, the Biden administration was so invested in pulling that international sort of relationship meeting off that it did not want to reveal that the Chinese had launched a balloon over America, which could surveil America, because it would mess up that meeting. And sure enough, it did. Once the Biden administration's hand was forced and it had to reveal that this thing was going on, it took them 12 hours, but it took them 12 hours to cancel that meeting between Anthony Blinken and the Chinese. And of course, there are going to be ramifications from that and a chilling effect on the relationship, which was already stressed out between us and Xi Jinping and the communists there in China. But honestly, I don't care about that as much as I care about the Biden administration's willingness, it appears, willingness to obfuscate this. Now, I know a lot of people are super worked up over the Biden laptop, and I'm not going to tell you it doesn't have value, but that is in second place in my mind in the rank order between these two things. And in my opinion, if the House of Representatives is going to use its oversight authority for anything, it needs to immediately convene I don't even know which committee this would be. Immediately convene an investigation by the committee responsible for this, and maybe we ought to reach out to Ken Buck or Lauren Boebert to see who that is, to investigate the how and the when of this. When did the Biden administration know it happened? Why didn't they take action then? Why did it wait until it was over freaking Montana, which, if you can remember your United States map, that's kind of in the middle, right? And then the next question, why did you wait from Montana to the North Carolina coast to do something? And if the answer is we wanted to minimize the possibility of risk to American life, is that the right answer? Is that the right answer? And if you're out there saying they should have shot it down right then, I realize Montana's a big state with very few people in it. But I think one of the questions you have to answer is, whose house, whose life should be put at risk to bring down this satellite? How many lives would be okay to take down? But that question, honestly, is secondary to why didn't we take this thing out earlier? And if the answer from the Biden administration becomes we did not know it until Montana, one, I think you're full of crap. But two, you got to be super concerned about our ability to keep America safe if the Chinese can launch a 3-bus end-to-end size balloon in diameter over America and we don't figure it out till it's halfway through its journey. That's got to cause you, it causes me great concern. Now, there's a corollary question to this thing, too, and that is it has come forward that there's evidence that this happened under the Trump administration, too. Now, he denies it. His national security officials that were in power and in place when it's alleged to have happened said, no, that never happened. But this story is developing. Fox News has come up with information that shows it absolutely happened, and now there's a question about whether or not the Trump administration knew about it after the fact as opposed to before. That's a big deal, right? If they knew about it after the fact, then he can't be blamed for not bringing it down the way he said he would have recently. He made those comments. But again, the question is, how in the world can the Chinese use such low-tech voodoo balloon technology? I mean, and I'm thinking of Jules Verne's Around the World in 80 Days, and we don't know about it until after it's cleared America? What? We can be defeated by a balloon in terms of surveillance? I need to know answers to this. So listen, this is my suggestion and my recommendation. I realize it's going to keep the House from passing a whole bunch of bills we don't want to see become law, but it's time to use that oversight thing to answer this question because this is critical. Can the Chinese defeat our surveillance through balloons? And have they in the past? When was the first time we knew of a Chinese balloon? And what step did we take to address it back then? If there were three of them, up to three of them during the Trump administration, when did we know about it? What steps did we take? How are we addressing this with our foe out there? And you can call it competitor. That's what we do. We don't say enemy, competitor. But they're a near-peer competitor. And if they're putting balloons into our airspace that have the ability to surveil us, how long has this been going on and why have we done nothing about it? Or what have we done about it? Because it's clearly not working. It clearly hasn't deterred them. And then we got to know, when did the Biden administration know about this first? And why didn't it take steps then to do this? These are questions that need to be answered far more quickly than the Biden laptop. Now, I'm not saying we can't walk and chew gum at the same time. But doesn't this have to be a priority for Congress? I mean, I'm having some trust issues here with a White House that has only revealed this after it became apparent that it was going to be revealed by the media in the metropolis of Billings, Montana, or wherever it was that was going to pop this story. Forgive the pun. Now, what's going on here? And what do we need to do? We have full lines. We're going to get to them right now. We're starting off the day and the week in the best way possible with Joan. Joan, how are you?
I'm really fine. How are you?
I'm living the dream, Joan. And by the way, the thing here I've been failing to do, which I need to do, is to identify what part of the state you're in. And it's Joan from Lakewood. She is a regular texter, listener, caller. What are your thoughts on all this stuff, Joan from Lakewood?
Well, I did get on with Steffan on Friday, and Steffan was outraged.
I believe it's Stephen, but go on.
Oh.
No, I'm kidding.
That's
a reference to a big meeting we had last week with some of the biggest folks in the business, and it's just funny. They referred to Steffan as Stephen perhaps 15 or 16 times, so now we feel obligated to change the pronunciation of his name to Stephen.
I see. Well, I can tell you, he was outraged about this. He said he was going to talk about this story forever, and I think that I had a real moment with him because I agreed totally and completely with him.
That's amazing.
I gotta say that I've been thinking about some of the stuff, and I'm sitting here going, well, they should have shut it down before it got to the Aleutian Islands.
Well, hang on. The reason the Aleutian Islands matters is because there is certain space outside of America over which you could have balloons like this. There is international territory. I presume what Tom Cotton's referencing is once we get within that 12-mile perimeter leading up to the Aleutian Island, that's when we can take action, and that's when we should have taken action.
Yep, I think that's true. And then I thought it was really interesting that it floated across Canada, and it made me think about NORAD and what kind of relationships and stuff was going on with NORAD. And why Canada didn't, notify its people. And then when it was floating to the Atlantic, I was sitting here going, well, maybe they didn't shoot it down in Alaska because the water would have been too cold to retrieve it. and maybe they have a retrieval plan, and maybe they shot it down over the Atlantic so they could retrieve it and see exactly what was there.
Yeah, I wonder. The NORAD question is a good one. NORAD is a legit organization. I have some very personal and professional contact with NORAD through a position that I'd held previously in my capacity in the Army. And it's a robust relationship. And you know that down there at Peterson Air Force Base, we have a joint command, and it includes officers from the Canadian military everywhere throughout the building in there. And it's for the purpose of providing really North American defense. That's what it's about. So it is interesting to me, and I have no information that I legitimately know, nor if I did, could I share it with anyone. But I think one of the questions has to be, does NORAD have the capability to detect this balloon before it enters American and Canadian airspace? And if they do, did they? And then the follow-on question is, and this is a policy one, this is not a NORAD question. The follow-on question is a policy question for the Biden administration, and that is, why didn't you take action sooner? And Joan, I love your point too. Where were the Canadian politicos on this? Where was Justin on this thing too? Why would they allow it to enter their airspace if they knew about it?
Well, this gets interesting because this past weekend, Apple came out with their latest security on the computers, okay? And do you know what it is? It's a key. They've made a portal on their computers so you can use a physical key to shut down the computer and stuff. And it's supposed
Apple
to
has?
be one. Yep.
I thought I was done with keys. Dang it.
And they've made this their latest security thing. And I'm sitting here going, I'm laughing myself sick because we've gone through passwords and now with this physical keys. And it's a little bit like maybe this balloon didn't get detected because it's too low tech, and the Chinese are reaching back to the low tech stuff. And the very funny thing is, my friend said, well, maybe they're calling it the I key. And I said, they have problems with that with IKEA.
It is interesting, Joan, that we're moving towards low tech in a lot of different areas, especially in some of the kinetic things that take place on the battlefield. But we're also still reliant upon the electric stuff. And I, like many out there, worry about the impact of an EMP, an electromagnetic pulse detonation of some kind that wipes out all the advantages that we have. Frankly, if we lost the ability to have maps on our phone and GPS, I'm fairly certain my kids would be lost. They could never make it home. I'm pretty, no matter how many times they make that drive, if they don't have the maps, I'm not sure they could make it home. Joan, thank you for the phone call. As always, you got us kicked off from the right direction. Joan's line is open. You fill it. 303-696-1971. We're going to cut away for a quick break, but I promise you, Joe from Arvada, Gary from Denver, and everybody else that's calling in right now will get to you. We also have a lot of texts coming in, and one of the texters is dead on right. The memes that have come off of this balloon thing are ridiculously funny, and I love that folks are sharing them with me through text, some of them to my personal phone, which I will never give out over the air, but if you have the number, thank you for all of the many balloon memes that are out there. They are laugh out loud funny. What's not funny is how this happened and some of the answers we need to get. This, in my opinion, is far more pressing and urgent given what's at stake than what's going on with Hunter Biden. I think they can coexist, don't get me wrong, but I want the House to focus on getting answers to this. And it can't just cover the Biden administration. This sounds to me like this is a nonpartisan issue, and we ought to treat it that way. So fill those phone lines, 303-696-1971. I promise we'll get to Joe and Gary and everybody else. I got to do something, though, business-wise right now, and that is to tell you about a no-nonsense, value-based law firm that does incredible work on behalf of victims, and that's Dan Caplis. Now, you've heard me talk about Dan for many, many months. In part, it's because he's a friend of the show. He's a friend of the station. He's a friend of mine. I used to work for Dan about 100 years ago. No, it's actually about 16 plus years ago. When I started with the firm, he had a young intern there who became a young lawyer named Babar Wahid. He has, over those last 16 years, developed into one of the top trial attorneys, along with Dan, who is probably the top trial attorney in the metro area. I did Babar's first trial with him. And I can tell you that kid had a ton of potential back then. It's hard to imagine how good he is now. He and Dan do one thing, and they do it really well. And that is they bring justice to those who can't get it on their own and would likely not get the same kind of justice at a lot of other places that advertise out there. This is not a high volume firm. They're not trying to get as many cases as they can in the front door to try to get as many checks flowing through there. That's not how they do business. You call them up, you tell them your story. And if you've been hurt or someone you love has been hurt through negligence, recklessness, and in some cases, even intentional conduct, Dan and Bobber will get you that justice you deserve. Not the quickest justice that they can get, but the best justice that you deserve. That's what they'll do. The way you reach out to them is you can go online at dancaplisLaw.com. That's Caplis with a C, dancaplisLaw.com. But the best way to do it is, man, have that free conversation with them. Pick up the phone and dial 303-770-5551. 303-720. Wait a minute. 303-770-5551. For one moment there, I was almost about to give my cell phone number out just because I said it. 303-770-5551. That's a full house, folks. 7s and 5s. It'll be lucky for you to give them a call. When we come back, Joe and everybody else on the phone lines, is George Brockler, 710 KNUS. Billy, I don't know who's responsible for the bumper music on today's George Show on 710 KNUS, but Daddy Like, you've gone back-to-back Mellencamp and now with a little classic Fleetwood Mac. I like that quite a bit. Please keep that going. We're going to go right to the phone lines as promised. Joe from Arvada, welcome back, my friend.
Hi, George. Well, I liked Fleetwood Mac when I was a kid, but hey, where's the Rush Limbaugh bumper music when I come on?
It comes on every once in a while. It's really coincidental, I think, more often than not when you pop on. But it's like I don't control it. I wish I did. If I could sort of put my own music list in there, one, a little disturbing for listeners, but two, awesome. Joe, what do you got for us? What do you think about all this balloon stuff?
Okay, look, it's twofold. It's two parts. The first part is, quite frankly, the Biden administration, including Joe Biden, is loaded with traitors. That's not just obvious; it's provable, and it will be.
Well,
the second part of it.
Describe for us first. Define for us what you mean by traitor, and who specifically are you talking about?
I want you to get the second part because it's intertwined with it.
Okay, what do you
think?
The
second part is wokeness. Wokeness.
Okay.
The second part of wokeness, and this also flows over from not just the administration, but it's in our media, George.
How does the wokeness impact the balloon thing?
Well, okay. So like, for instance, if you watched any of the other channels, I watch everything.
I don't.
Yes, I know. I'm quite prolific. But here's the thing. John Brennan, for example, was out there saying, we need to cool our jets. We've got to wait. We've got to wait. We've got to.
You and I can agree on this. There's simply no reason to ever listen to anything that John Brennan says. He has no credibility.
I understand. Yeah. He's a woke communist, former CIA.
I don't get how the woke
leader
thing factors into this, though, Joe.
Well, okay, because you see, the media was out there clamoring for, let's hold our peace. Let's not do anything. This is just a mistake. Everybody, let's just let kumbaya. Let's have peace on earth.
But how is that woke, man? You see what I'm saying?
Well,
the woke thing to me, and maybe I'm completely misunderstanding it, is all about some sort of social, racial redefinition of not only American history, but how we ought to look at those sort of issues moving forward. Exactly. I don't understand how that factors into the Chinese surveillance balloon.
Because the woke look is, we're all just going to live peaceably forever, happy as can be, all colors in a melting pot.
I just don't think
we're
that's
all
woke,
going to love each other. We're all going to love each other. The Chinese just want to have fun.
Joe, I just think that's a stretch of the term woke. But get to the other part. Who is a traitor? Define traitor for us, and then tell us who in the administration is a traitor and why. When
you open up the dictionary and see traitor, you should see Joe Biden and his son Hunter, traitors. And then next to him, you should see John Brennan as a good example. And yes, Christopher Wray and our former, the former FBI chief, what was his name? Comey.
But
those
traitors,
are traitors.
That's a strong word, man. Traitor is a strong word.
I understand. Well, see, traitors are willingly manipulated by the enemy for cash and for power. Cash and power manipulated by the enemy is a traitor. Get it?
I don't get it. I don't get it because I don't see it, man. It's one thing to say it. It's another thing to prove. Who's we, brother?
Patriots. I'm so glad you asked.
Buddy, you are the king of labels. It's very Alinsky-esque. But let me get back to this.
Thank you.
If Christopher Wray is a traitor, do you blame Trump for putting him in that position?
Yeah, but partly, just like I blame him for not seeing that Jeff Sessions was a moron. You know,
Is Jeff Sessions a traitor?
There's part of as I said, the other half is wokeness and response of pretend wokeness is also counts. The establishment pretend wokeness. If you see the establishment response, let's just calm down and let's have peace. You know, let's let everybody infiltrate our borders and all the spies come in. You know, we have thousands of Chinese spies in our United States because of this wokeness.
And you think they want that? You think they want that?
Well, I think that the reason that the balloon was allowed to go all the way, and by the way, I do believe President Trump was kept from the information that previous spy balloons were going over collecting data.
Why? Why do you believe that?
Well, because of the infiltration of the traitors in the CIA and the FBI, and also the woke people like Anita. I think it was her name.
I don't
Anita
understand,
Hill
buddy. I just think you're mistaken on the woke thing. You have stretched woke to include everything with which you disagree. That can't be it, right? Woke is much more limited to social stuff.
No, liberalism. Let's redefine it then. If you can't understand wokeness,
it's not that I can't understand it, buddy. It's that you're making up a definition that doesn't fit the word. So that's not my limitation.
Well, us patriots, we get it.
I think it's we patriots, but nonetheless, how are you defining patriot? How are you defining patriot?
Us rednecks, I'll just say
Joe
it,
from Arvada, how are you defining patriot?
Patriot is a person who has American conservatism deeply rooted in their makeup. They were most likely natural-born citizens of these United States.
You can't be a patriot if you weren't born here?
Wait a second. Just a second. And if they weren't, they came legally to the United States and assumed their citizenship according to the standards laid forward in these United States constitutional states, this republic. See, the thing is when people that came here in, like, for instance, before 1950, they came here to be Americans.
Joe, when
they didn't come here to be,
hang on, fair questions here to ask you, buddy, about
America.
this. I'm intrigued. I'm rubbernecking this whole thing. When Donald Trump was a Democrat, was he a patriot?
I think so was Ronald Reagan when he was a Democrat.
I'm asking you specifically about Trump. Were they patriots when they were Democrats?
I will admit it. I was once a Democrat.
Were you a patriot when you were a Democrat, Joe?
Yeah, well, here's the thing. I think that there's some truisms to the adage that when a man is 20, if he hasn't got a little essence of liberalism, he has no heart. When a man is 40 and he hasn't become a conservative, he has no brain.
No, Joe, I understand, but I'm asking you, when you were a Democrat, when Trump was a Democrat, when Reagan was a Democrat, were they patriots?
I believe they had the seed of patriotism planted in their hearts, but they were acting on it incorrectly.
But you were not a patriot when you were a Democrat.
I think I was fooled into wokeism, wokeism.
Buddy, this is a yes or no. This isn't an explain. This is a yes or no. Were you a patriot when you were a Democrat?
Not a complete patriot.
Is it impossible to be a patriot and be a Democrat at the same time?
Virtually, yes.
Man, I got to tell you, I served downrange with folks that were Democrats, and it's just hard for me to look at them and the things that they, buddy, forgive me. It's hard for me to look at them and think about all the extra things they've done away from their families and places where people want to kill them that I wasn't asked to do, and look at them and say, you're not a patriot because of your political beliefs. It's hard for me to get there, my friend.
Well, let me sum it up for you. They should be looking to become conservatives. And I don't really consider myself a, quote, Republican, unquote. I consider myself a Christian conservative. Christian first, conservative second. And the only thing that you can do as a Christian or a conservative is vote for a Republican. Come on, man.
So if you don't vote Republican, you are not a patriot.
I would say at this point, you may not be not only not a patriot, but you could be like John Brennan
But
a traitor.
Listen, I'm interested in knowing about this too. But do you remember one of the biggest spies in the history of America was a guy named Robert Hansen? Do you remember that name?
Okay, I'm weak on American history. Go ahead and tell me.
They've even made movies about this guy. But Robert Hansen, one of the biggest spies in American history, was a devout Christian, went to church all the time. And in fact, in some ways, sort of subtly proselytized while he was working in the FBI the way he was working. Was he a patriot? Also a Republican? Also voted conservative?
Well, obviously not if he was convicted of being a spy.
So the Christian thing doesn't protect you from being a patriot. It doesn't make sure that you're guarantee you're a patriot, right?
I would actually wonder if he really was a Christian. I'm sorry. I don't know enough about him.
Went to church
like
way
Pope
more than I did.
Or Pope John, not Pope Paul, Pope Francis. Pope Francis is a good example.
Yeah, but he can't be a patriot because he's not American, buddy. We wouldn't consider him a patriot. That's not
well,
fair.
I understand, but I'm just saying that if he came over here and changed his supposed allegiance to America and moved to Washington D.C., I wouldn't consider him even a Christian, frankly.
That's incredible. That's an incredible comment to make, Joe. That the Pope isn't a Christian. That's kind of an amazing concept.
That's right.
Yeah, buddy. I think a lot of people out there listening thinking they may disagree with the Pope, but that comment right there is cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs, brother.
Well, I'll tell him to his face if he needs to be told.
It wouldn't matter if you tell him to his face. Buddy, this has been a fascinating conversation. Last question. Why didn't Biden shoot the balloon down earlier, and then why did he shoot it down later?
Very simple. Very simple. His underlings, because Joe Biden can't make a cohesive thought on his own, his underlings told him to allow the balloon to traverse all the way across, collecting all the spy data until it was over the ocean when its mission was complete and all of the information had been transmitted back to China, to go ahead then and shoot it down.
He wanted them to complete their mission.
Exactly.
And it's because he wants China to win.
Oh, there's no question in my mind. He doesn't give one rat's about whether China destroys America or not. He's
then why
just
shoot it down? Why not just let it go? Why not just let it go? Why shoot it down?
Again, it's a matter of power and money.
Yeah, no, but I'm asking you, why shoot it down? Why not let it go? Why cancel the trip by Blinken out to China? Why cancel that?
It's exactly for the same reason that these people try to say that they're patriots, George, is because they want cover for the invasion. In other words,
everything they do that we disagree with is an act of traitorism. Everything they do that we agree with is just cover for that traitorism.
When you say they, remember, it's Joe Biden, his son Hunter, people like John Brennan and Christopher Wray. Let me name some more if you'd like. Anthony Blinken.
Traitors. These are all traitors.
See. Oh, there's no question in my mind.
Such a big word, man.
They're also.
This is dueling stuff.
They're also wokeisms.
Yeah.
They're yes. Thank you.
Two texters have sent in for you here. One is, this is more of a comment. Joe's calls would be so much shorter if he would just answer your questions. Agreed. But here's one. Can you be a conservative without being a Christian?
It's difficult.
Is it possible?
Because of this reason,
possible?
God endues those who are inhabitants of this United States with certain inalienable rights. God.
What the hell does that have to do with my question, man?
Well, you asked if they could be
can you be
conservative
can you
without
subscribe
being
to the Constitution and all the constitutional principles that are out there without believing in God? Or
not really.
Can you be
reason.
Jewish and be conservative?
Well, they do believe in God, yes.
Okay, but so you don't have to be Christian to be a conservative. Joe, this is a fascinating conversation, but man, it has to come to an end. And I'm so sorry for that. Thank you for the phone call. Tony, everybody else will try to get to you here when we can, but we got to cut away for a quick break. And when we come back, a special VIP guest. You stick around. George Brockwood on the George Show, 710 KNUS. George Brocco right back with you here at 710 KNUS. It is that magical time of the show when we get to talk to somebody super smart. And I have to say this, a back-to-back appearance by Amy Duncan from Alpine is like a double scoop of Rocky Road for me. So happy to have you back, Amy. How was the weekend?
Double scoop of Rocky Road. It was a good weekend, George. Enjoyed that sunshine, right?
Oh, absolutely.
After, man, January was, I don't know. Anyway,
it was
I guess
a little.
The markets were strong though, so that's good if you're a financial advisor.
How are we doing this morning?
Yeah, well, taking a look here. Excuse me. Right now, I think we're seeing a little bit of profit taking after such a strong January. Got the S&P down about 25, 0.5%. Dow is off about 140. NASDAQ off about 75 points. So we did see nice gains last week, even with the Federal Reserve decision to raise rates 0.25% and the historic job numbers that came in on Friday. Again, unemployment, the lowest rate since 1969.
Amazing.
We're at 3.4% in January. It's a 53-year low. What are we watching this week? Again, a little bit of profit taking this morning, but earnings season continues. We're about halfway through the Q4 earnings reports. We've got not quite the all-star lineup that we did last week, but nonetheless, some big names, Disney, DuPont, Pepsi, Chipotle, et cetera, all reporting their Q4 earnings. So I just want to take a quick tangent here based on an article that I saw over the weekend published by Barron's. And this was talking a little bit about, lingering effects of the pandemic, and in particular, a spike in people doing an online will. So they're estate planning online. And the theme was basically how, the pandemic made us confront life and loss. And this has been very, very common. Brian, Gabe, and I, in the last couple of years, I think have been asked for more estate planning references than ever before in my career. So here's the gist though, right? An online will can be a great approach. It's better than nothing in a lot of cases, but the reason I bring this up is it's also not without pitfalls, right? A lot of the sites might have been startups, but also not all states actually recognize online wills. So essentially it's the same as dying intestate. And online wills in particular aren't going to work for everyone, right, George? Individuals that have a more complex family dynamic, more complex asset base, we believe still should work with a professional. And I think the parallel, I'll wrap up here in a minute, but the parallel is similar to investing, right? Online sites can be an outstanding tool and certainly better than nothing in many cases. But for us, nothing is cookie cutter. It's not just stocks and bonds. It really is, what we bring up to our clients to protect them through life and afterward. So I think, a true financial plan means the total picture, and sometimes you can't get that from an online site. So buckle up for the markets this week. And if anyone would like some customized advice, not just from the internet, then give us a shout.
Look, to echo what you said, Amy, dying intestate, meaning without a will, means that the law decides where things go. And there's a pretty specific way that they divide things up under the law. If you want to have any influence at all over your life's work and where it goes, you got to have a will. And the online ones, probably better than nothing. But if you have any investments at all, you're right, Amy, there are some tax consequences that can happen to the loved ones you're trying to help out here as you pass on to the next life and all that. And if you just rely upon the internet for that, you are setting yourself up for some pain for them. Not for you, you're gone, but for them. And if your goal is to try to help out that next generation or the generation after that one, you got to involve a financial planner. That's just the smart way to go.
You said that beautifully, and I didn't want to get too long, but I think the message that I was trying to convey to your listeners resonates with you with your legal background. But the other thing that you're not going to get from a simple online document is the follow-up. I mean, we recommend, just like a financial plan, not quite as frequently as your investments, but every few years you might want to just touch base with your estate planning attorney, make sure the family hasn't changed or your intent hasn't changed. And sometimes you do that online document, life throws you a curveball, something happens, and all of a sudden, you're hosed because nothing was reviewed and no one was proactive about it. So again, oftentimes better than nothing, but certainly there are pitfalls, and this article caught my attention.
Alpine Planning Group, they are a comprehensive financial planning firm, including all this will stuff, committed to improving your long-term financial success.
Well, we don't do the wills.
No.
We're
But
not
you
attorneys.
but you do give the advice that they can take to the person that's helping them draft that. Investing, as always, it's a matter of trust, and they're prepared to earn yours. Call them today, 303-843-0918. I say it again, 303-843-0918. Thanks, Amy. I hope we get to hear from you again.
Thanks, George. Have a good Monday.
You too. See ya.
Securities and investment advisory services offered through Woodbury Financial Services, Inc., member FINRA SIPC and registered investment advisor. Alpine Planning Group and Woodbury Financial Services, Inc. are not affiliated entities. 14 West Dry Creek Circle, Littleton, Colorado, 80120.
Tony, you're on 710. Tony, what do you think about all this balloon stuff?
Hey, George, been listening to you for a while and first time calling in. And
great.
I like the way you put this, on the table for your audience to kind of come at different directions.
Yeah.
And I've got to say a couple things. I trust, first of all, I do believe that the military, our military, our president, they know that is a spy balloon. That is not a weather balloon.
Agreed.
They know it.
Agreed.
I believe the military has accurately sized it up that balloon's not learning any more about our country than what they can get from their spy satellites. I mean, Google Earth satellite reveals as much as this balloon is teaching them. So there's question as to why the balloon, why this obvious balloon that could be seen from the ground, why is it floating across the United States? And I heard a few experts on this. When I say a few experts, they're Chinese specialists at a couple of universities. I don't remember the universities. It was on the BBC through the middle of the night, and I caught a bit of what they were saying. And they made some really interesting observations. And that is, she wanted this meeting with Blinken as much as we wanted this meeting with Blinken. He has made an announcement. The announcement that he made.
Tony,
yes?
You got to forgive me, man. I've given you my last 2 minutes of the show, but they're about to cut us off, man. I love you for giving us a call. Forgive me for cutting you off, okay?
Can we come back, or is it you got a long
No, I got a guest at 8 o'clock, man. Call back after Andy Rougeot, though, okay? Andy Rougeot, mayoral candidate, coming on. We made news last week. Let's do it again. 710 KNUS.
Want to take your favorite radio station wherever you go? Well, now there's an app for that. No matter where you are, stream your favorite shows. Tap the app to listen to podcasts. Talk back to your favorite local hosts.
At the tone, leave a message.
Call the show. Set your alarm. Enter contests and win prizes. All in the palm of your hand. Available now for iOS and Android devices in the App Store or Google Play. And best of all, it's free. Download today.
Somehow we're halfway through with the Monday show right here on 6 February 2023. George Brockler with you. We have a special guest on the line. We had him on last week to just do a little talking about his campaign to become the next mayor of the great city of Denver. That interview has spawned some other news, and there's other updates along the way with this campaign. This thing is just, it's just taken such weird turns. Andy Rougeot, thanks for joining us again.
Thanks for having me, George.
Hey, first thing I want to do is I want to talk about this. It's so bizarre, man, but there's an upcoming debate on one of the major news stations out there. Folks will know it as 9 News. It is quickly becoming, interestingly, by ratings, the second most watched news station behind KDVR, which is crazy. By the way, full disclaimer here. I'm a legal analyst for KDVR, used to be a legal analyst for 9 News, but the numbers don't lie. They are quickly becoming second place in almost every single major time slot. Nonetheless, they're having a big time mayoral debate coming up on, I don't remember the day, Andy, but tell us about it.
Sure. So there's a 9 News debate on February 16th for the Denver mayoral race. I am being excluded from this debate. I'm not being excluded because of polling, not being excluded because of fundraising. I'm being excluded because I am the only major candidate who is not taking taxpayer dollars and putting into my pocket. So they are using as their only metric for this taxpayer takedown your willingness to accept the fair election funds, which is, as a reminder, a situation where if a donor gives $50, then $450 is taken out of the taxpayer's wallet to make it a $500 donation. And in our last talk, we talked about some of the corruption and misuse of these funds, but the idea of using that as the sole criteria for whether or not somebody should be standing on a debate stage, their willingness to take taxpayer dollars and potentially use it for personal gain is pretty astounding.
So are there candidates that are going to be permitted this airtime, free airtime? Are there candidates out there who are polling somewhere near sub-zero, who, because they've taken these election funds, they're able to be on the debate?
That's correct. You have very minor candidates who are able to be on this debate, 13 total, despite no name ID and very little fundraising. However, because they're accepting these fair election funds, they're able to be on that stage.
What's the justification for that 9 News gave? Because that seems kind of arbitrary to me. Like, we've just drawn a line at whoever's going to subscribe to this. And if you happen to have been a policy opponent of it, too bad, so sad. Unless you take taxpayer money for your campaign, you can't be on our show. What do they tell you?
So we first talked to the city because we wanted to make sure this wasn't a rule that was coming from the city of Denver, especially because we are attending the other major debate this Thursday at Regis University. Talking to the city, there was no requirement that these 2 big debates be limited to fair election funds. So this was a decision that was only made by 9 News, and they were unwilling to justify their decision.
What do you mean? What does that mean, unwilling to justify? I mean, didn't they say something along the lines of, well, we've partnered up with the taxpayer-funded election people?
Exactly. And after we showed them that there was not a requirement to limit it just to people who received the taxpayer cash through the fair election funds, they said they'd already made this decision. That's how they were going to limit it.
Buddy, this just sounds really bizarre. Like, it sounds like they've made a policy decision that unless you take taxpayer money to run your campaign, they're going to limit your access. Have you considered any sort of, I don't even know if this makes sense, man, FCC involvement? I mean, this sounds crazy.
I'd rather just highlight some of the abuses of people who are taking these fair election funds. So people who are taking these taxpayer dollars and putting into their pockets to spend at things like liquor stores, putting in their campaign's pockets to spend at things like cannabis-themed events, for YouTube influencers, for payments to the Colorado Democratic Party. So, these candidates and it's for both candidates for mayor and for city council, are wasting taxpayer dollars. And the fact that we're using that as the basis for should you be in this debate, instead of, in my mind, we should be excluding anybody who is using that money is pretty shocking.
I'm real interested to see if they even try to address this at the front end of whatever this debate is. I also think, and we could sense this and feel this in the last election cycle, there is a growing movement, in my opinion, on the center-right, Republican, conservative side of things, to simply boycott 9 News for their debates and stuff because they feel like they can't get a fair shake. Now, I admittedly, and I've said this before, I only watched the debate between John Kellner and the Attorney General. And I thought it was incredibly fair. I thought that the questions that they asked were even-handed to both. But I know from behind the scenes that candidates were asking more and more questions about why are we even doing this? We're going to be talking to a completely left-wing viewership, and we're not going to be treated fairly. I think this is another bullet point on the why you can't trust 9 News to be even-handed in the way they conduct these things. And that's disappointing to me, because I think when they want to be, they can be incredibly even-handed. And I point back to that debate. What's the future hold for this thing, man, if they keep blocking people who are center right?
Yeah, and to be clear, I want to be on that debate stage. I want a chance to highlight how I'm going to enforce the camping ban, how I'm going to add 400 police officers, how I'm going to build more affordable housing. And I think the people of Denver deserve that chance, too, to have an actual unique voice, because otherwise the voices of that debate stage are going to be saying the same thing from the same political viewpoint, from the same background as career politicians.
I can see excluding someone based on polling. I can see excluding someone based on fundraising, but to not have them present because they won't agree to take 9-to-1 matching funds from Denver taxpayers when your policy position is one of, I want to be a good steward of taxpayer money. It just, buddy, it sounds crazy to me. It's very disappointing.
I agree. I hope they change their mind prior to next week.
Listen, you've referenced some other things, though, and you know that Kyle Clark on his show did a extended piece, what they call fact-checking or something, truth-telling. I don't know what it is, but they did that based really upon your answers to my questions in our conversation last week on this, and I wanted to ask you about some of those things and give you an opportunity to explain them. Is that fair?
That's perfectly fair.
So we've done our best to try to cut these things up, and I'm going to play them and ask you to respond to them. Okay, so this is cut number 1 for us.
Rougeot claimed without offering any evidence that there are mayoral candidates who are paying themselves salaries out of those funds. Denver Election says that would violate campaign finance law.
So we are encouraging people to pay themselves salaries for fake runs for mayor.
They're paying themselves salaries off of the matching funds?
Yes, I think it's criminal.
Rougeot wouldn't tell us who he's talking about, so we went through every campaign's expense reports. Nothing there. Rougeot then told us the money's being hidden through payroll companies. Both campaigns using a payroll company provided copies of their payroll forms for us to examine. We found no evidence to back up Rougeot's claim, which Denver Election says it would investigate if he wants to name names and put it in writing.
Andy, thoughts on that? How do you respond to that? That's a pretty hard punch.
I agree. And to be fair, I did misspeak during our initial interview when I said candidates were paying themselves salary. They're just taking money out of taxpayer pockets and putting it into their own to spend on liquor stores, taking pockets out of it to spend on cannabis-themed events, on YouTube influencers, on payments to the Colorado Democratic Party. So it is not as obvious as a salary payment. However, it's still clear abuse. And it's, again, amazing to me when someone is highlighting how politicians are wasting taxpayer dollars and how they're using corruptly. The answer from an organization like 9 News is not to actually investigate. And we provided in an Excel highlighting of all these abuses, but instead to go after the business owner, former Army officer who's highlighting this abuse.
There's also one candidate in particular who has spent over $12,000 or $13,000 on legal consultation, I think using some of those matching funds as well. But I want to be clear. You misspoke when you answered the question last week about it, and that it's not that any candidates are paying themselves salaries. You're objecting to them using taxpayer funds to pay for all these other things that they think should be related to their campaign. Is that fair?
That's fair.
Here's another clip right here.
Rougeot's wildest claim involves Denver's matching funds for political campaigns.
So I'm proud I'm the only candidate who is not taking that funding.
That's not true. There are 4 candidates who are not getting the matching funding.
Andy, thoughts?
So this is a great example of 9 News saying, how can we find a way to smack someone who's disagreeing with us? Like in this case, the other 3 minor candidates are people who initially said they would like to accept taxpayer funding and didn't hit the threshold of required donors. So I am the only candidate who from the beginning has said, I am not taking this money because it's an abuse of taxpayers.
Oh, this is a good, buddy. This is a great clarification. So these other three candidates that they're using to say what you're saying is not true. It's only technically not true because they're too minor to reach the threshold that would give them access to the taxpayer funds, but they want to take taxpayer funds.
That's correct, and this is in line with several of the other, supposed fact checks we're going to hear going forward.
My goodness.
Is it's a field, it's a field of 17 candidates. So there are some very minor candidates who have no support, who will have X, Y, or Z type experience. So when I'm saying, for example, I'm the only candidate with the business experience needed to run our city, I'm talking about major candidates. There are, of course, some.
Are you the only candidate who has rejected taxpayer funds for your campaign?
Yes, I'm the only candidate who has, from the beginning, said I am not accepting and I will not accept fair election funds.
That is an important clarification. Andy, we have a couple others I want to run by because I think you sort of teased them here. Let's go with this one.
Rougeot also falsely blamed Denver's pedestrian deaths on jaywalking by people experiencing homelessness.
When we're having a spike of pedestrian deaths, mostly caused by homeless individuals cutting across busy streets.
The medical examiner statistics show that most pedestrians killed in 2022 were not homeless. Same for 2021 and 2020. The statistics Rougeot cited as pedestrian deaths include other causes of death mixed in, like suicides and falls.
Andy?
Yeah, this is another great example. We're providing information showing how we've had multiple pedestrian deaths in our city caused by homeless people crossing streets. And we provided that information to 9 News, and then their interpretation is that, well, we can't find an exact news story highlighting what's going on, or we can't find that it's 100% this instead of that. So it's back to the broader picture of if people in Denver see what is going on. In the case of pedestrians crossing, when you're driving across Broadway or driving down Colfax, and you see someone cutting across the street, we know that's a problem. We know when someone's sitting on the streets in a tent, that's an issue. We know when houses are being broken into our neighborhoods, that's an issue. And instead of our media saying, yes, this is a problem, they try to find every way they can to protect the established politicians instead of holding them to account.
Andy, to be fair, is it that your reference to the fact that it's most of the pedestrian deaths are being caused by the homeless? Is that something you guys have numbers to back up?
Yes. So there is a statistic that is being used by that is, I believe, 15 deaths of homeless individuals through blunt force trauma. That includes vehicle strikes. So, in that fact check, Kyle Clark is referencing that those could also be other causes in addition to it. So of the total pedestrian deaths, I believe with 24 total in 2022, 15 were homeless individuals who've been struck by a blunt force. There's a possibility of that 15, there are other causes other than a vehicle striking that blunt force.
Okay, that's kind of a big deal, though. That could be a bat or a brick or something, right?
So there's a separate category for homicide. So it can't be that.
Well, what's the other blunt force trauma that you could, maybe you fell off of a bridge or something? I mean, what are the other causes?
Yeah. That again, not my specialty. I would argue that this would be a great area for an investigative reporter to be looking at and saying, hey, if this is a major cause of death in our city for people who are experiencing homelessness, that could be a very interesting thing to know. I think it's pretty clear inside the statistics that a large portion of that is death from being hit by a vehicle crossing a street. The fact that we're arguing over, well, is it possible that there's one way you could interpret the statistic, and using that as a basis for a fact check is, in my mind, not very helpful.
I'll say this. I'm not supporting, I get where they're coming from, which is like, listen, if you say it's most, you got to prove most, right? And what they're saying is you can't prove most because there's a whole bunch of these deaths that are blunt force trauma. You and I don't know what's caused by them. And I think their position is you say it, you back it up.
I think it's a good position to have.
Hey, let me run another one by you.
Rougeot constructed another false claim that people who have built homes are waiting a year for a certificate of occupancy to move in.
Yeah, a year of people waiting for a stamp from the government to be able to move into a home that's already finished.
That's not true. Denver does have big delays getting building projects approved. But once the build is finished, Community Planning and Development says the final sign-off and certificate of occupancy, that comes in 1 or 2 business days.
Andy, thoughts?
So we provided the 9 News the example, it was previously in Denver Post, of a modular home construction in North Denver. This is a site where it was affordable housing, where a modular home is essentially a pre-built home that's installed on a plot of land. Those homes are still unoccupied more than a year later. So when I said in your program last
and they're
week,
completed, those are completed homes?
So a modular home, once installed, is physically completed in the sense that it has already all the plumbing, wiring, obviously framing, the exterior. Still needs hookups and then some interior work to be completed. So
And
when
is the reason it's not occupied because of this permitting thing you talked about?
Yes, because they're waiting for permanent approval. So for some reason, 9 News interpreted my comment as waiting for a temporary certificate of occupancy, which I'm not sure how they got there, from saying you've got a modular home that's fully installed, that's waiting for government approval to be able to complete the hookups and then open that house. As someone who was a builder, so I ran a commercial maintenance business for 5 years, where we pulled many permits. Something where you're sitting waiting for a permit, if everything is done other than one hookup, means that place is done. Just using the word as TCO versus CO, I think, doesn't make any sense.
Is this an example, or is this like the average? Is it an average wait time of a year, or is it just, look, here's an anecdote of a build that has to wait a year to get this permit?
Here's an example in that case.
Do you know what it is on average?
I don't know off the top of my head. However, there has been extensive reporting, for example, by Denver Post on the serious delays that we're suffering from having a failed permit department. And having talked to many people who are building, I've heard story after story after story of people waiting for a stamp from the government to say, yes, you are approved to build this. So it's an empty plot of land, incurring that cost, adding to the eventual cost of the young families, blue-collar workers, first-time home buyers are going to move into that home.
You talked about your business experience. This is one that isn't policy or substantive in that way, but it is one that 9 News took issue with.
Rougeot then dropped another whopper.
Because I'm the only candidate with actual business experience in this race.
Candidate Kelly Bruff ran the Denver Metro Chamber of Commerce. Candidate Kwame Spearman is the CEO of Tattered Cover Bookstores. Candidate Thomas Wolf is an investment banker. Candidate Aurelio Martinez has run a restaurant and a business center. Candidate Robert Trita is a developer.
Any thoughts, Andy?
So there's only one major candidate listed there, which is Kelly Bruff. And that is someone who does not have business experience. It's someone who's been a lobbyist and paid $4.2 million to lobby the city and to lobby the state for the past several years. And just saying that, we're a lobbyist for the business community doesn't mean you know how to make a payroll, doesn't mean you know how to lead a team, doesn't mean you've actually experienced the day-to-day of a business. I wouldn't expect the head lobbyist for the plumbing union to do a remodel of my bathroom. That's why I made that comment.
That's an interesting point there. But the other ones that you're talking about, they do have business experience, but they're not major candidates, is what you're saying.
That's correct. Those are minor candidates.
And minor candidates based on what's the metric you're using?
You can use fundraising. You can use polling. So, for example,
is there polling out there?
So they had some polling, but that would be after, for example, before Mr. Spearman entered the race. I believe Mr. Wolf has raised $25,000 and had it matched by public matching to bring it to just under $100,000. I'm not sure about the other candidates in terms of their fundraising, but I know it's been minor.
So, but you acknowledge some of the candidates have business experience. They're just not the ones that are going to make it.
Of course. So, for example, if I was to talk about my Army experience, there very well may be a minor candidate who served in the reserves in 1986. And then I apologize if I missed that person when I'm talking about it, but I'm referencing the major candidates in this race.
Last one for you, and it's kind of a 1-2 thing here. This one's about 40 seconds.
Mayoral candidate Andy Rougeot is currently in a battle with the truth. In just one recent interview on George Brockler's talk radio show, Rougeot racked up a whopping 7 false claims.
Because when you look at me versus all the other candidates who are all sort of career politicians, the difference is I am the only person who's saying I will enforce the campaign ban.
That's not true. Rougeot packed 2 falsehoods into one sentence. He's not the only candidate in the race who isn't a career politician. Not even close. Of the 17 candidates for Denver mayor, 2/3 of them are new or relatively new to politics. Rougeot's claim that he's the only candidate saying he'll enforce the camping ban is also not true. Here are the candidates at a recent event, raising their hands to say they'd enforce it.
Any thoughts on that, Andy?
Sure. We're back to the issue of major candidates. So I'm the only major candidate who's not a career politician. And, if they want to be persnickety, they can say, well, for example, this person ran the Chamber of Commerce for a number of years, and prior to that was the chief of staff for the Denver mayor. That person's a career politician, in my mind. They've been involved in politics for a long, long time, even if they haven't held elected office. With regards to the camping ban, I am the only candidate who's going to enforce the camping ban. We at a previous debate, they had people raise their hands to say, would they eliminate the camping ban? They're using, whether or not people said they would eliminate or not. Our current mayor has not eliminated the camping ban. However, he is not enforcing it. He is clearly not keeping our streets clean. He is clearly not making sure these people get into the mental health and drug addiction services they need. So that is 100% true claim that I am the only candidate who will actually enforce our camping ban.
Even though the other ones raised their hand and said they would?
The other one said they would not eliminate the camping ban. There's a key difference between saying you're going to allow something.
I see what you're saying.
You're saying you're going to keep something on the books, saying you're actually going to enforce a rule. And look, and even if there's a career politician who says, I will enforce this, but they haven't in the past, they haven't made any efforts in the past, they've shown no willingness to enforce our laws in the past, I don't think you can trust them. But I can promise you, when I am mayor, you will see our camping ban enforced. And that's something where 4 years later, when I go back in front of the voters, they will be able to say crime is down, unsheltered camping is down, and housing is more.
I think that's an important distinction, man, which is the difference between I won't eliminate and I will enforce. That'll be interesting. The other part, though, is you concede that there are a number of candidates that are first timers or close to first timers, not career politicians. They're just not part of the majors. As we get ready to end this segment, by the way, would you do me a favor? List, if you would, who you think the major candidates are. My guess is, man, most of the people listening have never heard of them, but go ahead.
Yeah. So you talk about people like Councilwoman Ortega. You talk about people like Representative Herod. You talk about people like State Senator Chris Hansen. You talk about people like former head of Chamber of Commerce, Kelly Brough. And then hopefully I don't miss anybody else.
How about Mike Johnston? Is Mike Johnson major?
Mike Johnson is another great example. Yes.
So out of the 8 billion people running, there's about 6. It sounds, and my math could be up, but it sounds like there's about 6, including you, that make the major candidates based on polling and fundraising.
Yeah, and you've seen a couple articles where they'll talk about people who are considered, either front runners or primary candidates. And you sort of see those same names, including mine, in that mix.
Man, I appreciate you coming on to help us do the fact checking of the fact checkers. And what's so interesting is that this is the same organization that refuses to give you airtime based on this incredibly arbitrary distinction between those who are willing to take taxpayer money to fuel their political ambitions and those who are not. That is really, really interesting. My hope is some other station out there, KDVR, decides to do a similar debate, but leaves it open to the people who can pass some other meaningful metric like fundraising or polling or something like that.
And, what's interesting, of course, is that we highlighted the abuse of the system by, talking about how they're putting taxpayer dollars into their campaign pockets. And when we protested the fact that this was being the criteria for this taxpayer takedown was your willingness to take those taxpayer dollars, that is when suddenly we got the interest of doing a fact check.
That is very, very interesting. Andy Rougeot, candidate. We're going to have you back on because you're a candidate for mayor for Denver, because I do want to talk to you about something that has recently happened, which is a 6-figure trip to Africa by Mayor Hancock in the waning days of his administration. I want to have you back on to talk about that. Can you do that?
Of course. So I'm always excited to highlight some of the abuse of our mayor and our candidates for mayor.
Andy, as I sign off here, where can people find out more about your campaign and you?
Please go to andyfordenver.com. Say it again, andyfordenver.com, to learn a little more about me and hear about how I'm going to fight for Denver's future.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you.
Hey, that was Andy Rougeot, candidate for mayor. andyfordenver.com. I'm so sorry, I screwed that up. andyfordenver.com. When we come back, I'd love to get your reaction to that. Get your thoughts. 303-696-1971. What do you think about 9 News' decision to exclude a major candidate from their debate based on his refusal to take taxpayer money? And what about Andy's answers to the question? Satisfied, unsatisfied? I'd love to have that conversation with you. You can hit us with the text too. And this time I know I'm going to be right. 8:45-ish, Kathleen Chandler from the Independence Institute. If that turns out to be wrong, folks, I think I'm just going to sign off for the day. It's George Brockler on the George Show, 710 KNUS. God, some of these introductions are just so much longer than I thought before the words get there. I want to sing along, but I can't. It's George Brockler on the George Show, 710 KNUS. My thanks to Andy Rougeot, candidate for Denver mayor. You can find more about him at andyfordenver.com. I really appreciate him coming on, one, to tell us about this craziness with this arbitrary decision to exclude people from the debate based on whether or not they're willing to accept taxpayer money to fund their political ambitions. That seems ridiculous. And it seems like it's an easy line for them to draw when they know the only guy who isn't going to be there is a center-right candidate who happens to be polling well and is well-funded, in part from himself. But we know that's not a problem for 9 News because of Polis, right? Very, very interesting. I think it's disappointing, too, because I think he should be part of the conversation. And if they're already going to throw up another, 15, 16 people, some of whom no one's ever heard of or won't remember, who appear to have no ability to raise even the funds necessary to stick their hand in the taxpayer till to fund their campaigns, that's just disappointing. I hope another station comes along and does it the right way and brings on people who can actually pass a meaningful threshold, not the one that's, would you take taxpayer funded stuff? That's a little bit crazy. Our number 303-696-1971. I appreciate him coming on also to answer the questions raised by 9 News through their fact checking thing. And it's a long piece that they've done. And they stressed that, hey, it's the longest piece we've ever done, 7 things. And what I appreciate about some of the answers Andy gave is they're clarifying, but listen, we got to be candid here about this. Now, the first one was that question about candidates paying themselves salaries out of the campaign financing stuff. And Andy right away just said, yeah, I misspoke. And I think what he's saying when he said he misspoke was, I was wrong. I said it. I was wrong factually. And I own that. I appreciate it. There's some folks that have texted in here that are like, misspoke. It was a lie. I don't know if it was a lie. It was probably said without having confirmed it based on some other information he was given, but he owned that, at least, that it was wrong. Now, the matching funds one, that one to me goes in the Andy column for sure, as opposed to 9 News, because remember, 9 News goes out of its way. Let's just play it because this one's important.
Rougeot's wildest claim involves Denver's matching funds for political campaigns.
So I'm proud I'm the only candidate who is not taking that funding.
That's not true. There are 4 candidates who are not getting the matching funding.
Now, remember the 2 words that were used there. Andy says, I'm not taking taxpayer funding. And Kyle's response is, there are 3 other candidates who are not getting the funding. And in that little difference, Andy wins, because Andy's point is, and he made it here, and I'll be interested to see if they address this in Kyle's show, is those 3 candidates that aren't getting it, they're trying to stick their hand in the taxpayer till, but they're so ineffective as campaigners and have such little support, they can't cross the threshold to get to access the taxpayer funding, which makes Andy the only candidate not taking those funds, not trying to take those funds. Those other 3 want to. They just can't meet the minimum threshold to do it. That one to me is a win for Andy. Now, the jaywalking one, buddy, that's tough. And I appreciate this about Andy. I said, I think 9 News is saying, if you say it, you got to prove it. And he said, well, I agree with that policy. And I think the bottom line is the claims that they made are not supportable. It doesn't mean that they aren't true, but they're not supportable yet. And that is 15 deaths that are caused by blunt force trauma. Andy's team has said, hey, we're going to throw that in the hit by a car jaywalking column. I don't think you get to do that. It's undeniable that homelessness is a growing problem in the city. It is undeniable that many of those jaywalking deaths are homeless. I don't know how they keep the other data, but honestly, someone ought to chase down the other 15, and that someone has to be the person making the claim. And so my hope is Andy's team does that, and when they come forward, if it turns out those 15 are caused by jaywalking, boom, they win. If not, I think Kyle has a point there, and that's some of the problems with, and this happens with a lot of candidates. And a couple texters, by the way, too, have come in here and said, hey, listen, there's no chance that 9 News does the same deep dive on any of the other candidates. Of course that's true. They're not going to do that, but that's not the point. The point here is, are we giving them the opportunity to make these statements? Now, the other ones are the 1-year permit thing. Andy's comment was broader than that, and I think that's how 9 News took it, that he was talking about on average 1 year. I don't have the sound available to play from Andy's statement on that. But at the end of the day, what he's saying is, listen, there's this major project that's being developed and they're waiting a year for this permit. That's the gist of this whole thing. And I think even Kyle admitted, look, the permitting process is broken and takes forever to get it done in Denver. That one, I don't know, man. That one to me seems like a toss-up. That doesn't go in either person's column, but certainly Andy has the facts to back up his claim about taking a year. Then we had the claim about only one with business experience. And I think this is where precision matters. Andy said, I'm the only candidate. And when he was on the show today, he says, what I meant to say was I'm the only major candidate. That is a distinction with meaning. And then I asked him to define major, and he said, hey, based on polling and fundraising and all that stuff. And then he actually listed the candidates who he believes would be considered major. I'm sure the minor candidates there would disagree, but that's what minor candidates do. They disagree when they're not part of the big group. But I also agree with this. Being the CEO of the Chamber of Commerce, being the head lobbyist for the Chamber of Commerce, is not business experience. That is not business experience. Running an organization where you hire and fire people and manage a budget, that gets you a lot closer. But you know who else does that? NGOs and nonprofits. And that isn't quite running a business either. So I think his point is well made as to Kelly. And again, I don't know her background. Maybe we can get her on the show and she can tell us about some other business experience or how being the head of the Chamber of Commerce is business experience. But no doubt there are members of this pool of people running to be mayor who have business experience. Kwame's one of them, whether he's a major candidate or not. Dude's CEO of the Tattered Cover. That's a business, man. They live and they die based on profits, based on selling books and a bunch of other things. I had a chance to be on Colorado Inside Out with him. He seems like a well-spoken, super smart guy, super empathetic too. I mean, I was taken with his answers on some of the questions we had. But that is legit business experience. It just sounds like he doesn't meet Andy's threshold, or probably ours either, for being a major candidate. And then the final thing was the only guy who isn't a career politician. And again, Andy qualified that with what I should have said was the only major candidate who isn't a career politician. I don't know if Kelly Brough is considered a career politician or not. I don't know if she's ever run for anything. But at the end of the day, those last two, I think, based on the words chosen, not the words intended and not the words clarified today, but the words chosen, I think that goes into the 9 News column. So on these, if there are 7 of these things, I think it's Andy 1, toss-up 1, although that permitting one, I want to lean Andy on that one. I'll go Andy 2, jaywalking 1, I can't give to him. Campaign thing, I think it's got to be 9 News 5, Andy 2. That's how I view those. What do you think about it? 303-696-1971. I'll let you know some of the texts here. George, thank you. His answers seem well researched and thought out. Another, would they disqualify Polis for not taking taxpayer money? Of course they would not. Of course. That dude set up the system so that self-funders have an advantage over us unwashed masses. I hope you post a link to this interview on Twitter. I'm not the smart guy that knows how to do that, but if Billy can figure out a way to post that hour, of course, I'll retweet that. That'll be a good one. Here's another one. 9 News will not question other candidates the same ways they did with Andy. Totally agreed. Here's another one. He's such a deflector. Now it's the media's problem to do reports to clear up his unsubstantiated allegations. I did have a problem with that one on the jaywalking thing, but this happens with every politician. This is not a right or left thing. This is a politician thing. And I'm certain I probably did this when I was on the campaign trail. You feel passionately about something. You got about 90% of it right, but that last 10% that puts it over the top and makes it newsworthy or at least sound biteable, that's the part that sneaks up and gets you. And I think that happened probably with Andy too, but we're going to have him back on too. There's a story here about Mayor Hancock's trip to Africa on the taxpayer dime to the tune of 6+ figures. We're going to talk to him about that as well. Listen, stick around, Kathleen Chandler. When we come back, George Brockler on the George Show, 710 KNUS. George Brocco right back with you here at 710 KNUS. Happen to go to our VIP line. This is how we respond to many of the listeners who texted in a week or so ago when we were having a conversation about getting involved, and that is how do I find out what boards and commissions and school seats and all this other stuff that are available for me to participate in government and try to rein in the craziness that takes place at the government level. There is only one go-to person, as far as I know, on the planet Earth, and that is the Independence Institute's Kathleen Chandler. Thanks for joining us, Kathleen.
Well, gosh, that's quite the intro on the planet Earth. Well, I hope just in the state of Colorado, I hope the rest of the planet is also working towards these goals. But yes, indeed, we have the local government project, which is through the Independence Institute. And that project has classes. We host classes a couple times a year. In fact, we just had a class last week, but I'd be happy to talk to anybody individually. But these classes teach you the basic practical how to get involved in government without being elected. A lot of people don't realize that government really is about the people, right? And not just about the elected. And what we need to do is start taking back our government by taking back our community and realizing that we can't just complain anymore. We are the solution to the problem. So I just basically teach practical how to go to the county website, how to go to your city website, how to talk to the maybe the liaison, the bureaucrat who's in charge of that commission, what commissions are out there. I can coach you once you're on a commission because there is a process to get on that commission, going through an interview. All of those things are practical how-tos. And I've discovered if people understand step one, then they will do step 2, 3, or 4 on their own because they'll get motivated. But step one really is the most difficult because government makes it very difficult for the people to get involved.
Why do you think that's just a process that happened, or do you think it's intentional?
Both. I think it's intentional because let's say you're on the city council and there is an issue in your community. Well, instead of taking on that issue as being an elected official, you tend to pass it on to others, right? So you create a board or commission that's going to study this problem. And then it kind of gives you political cover as a board, as the city council member from the board, right? They can take these crazy recommendations. They can come up with these ideas. And then you as the elected, all you have to say is, well, I was just following what the people said, right? Mm-hmm. So it gives this weird sense of political cover. And if you actually handpick the people on the commission, you can actually predetermine your outcome. So it even gives you more political cover to do something that is unpopular. But I also think it rose from the fact that citizens were wanting government to do more, which is really what we're trying to prevent, right? So they would go to government for solutions, and government doesn't have the solution. So then government again would say, hey, why don't you come up with a solution and we'll implement it through government. And so in a sense, the citizens got what they wanted at the time. I don't think they understood that government would not only be the solution, but would be the power grab in that solution and the taxing authority in that solution. And so when we look to government to solve all problems, that's when this weird alliance happens.
Now, Kathleen, you have this program at the Independence Institute. A couple questions. One, how many thousands of dollars does it cost, and is it in person?
Well, all of the above. No, I'm not kidding. It costs no money, which is we would appreciate it if you donated thousands of dollars. We are a nonprofit organization, and so any amount of money actually helps us further the mission of personal and economic freedom in the state of Colorado. But the class, I do ask for a suggested donation of $5. The class is held in person if warranted, but mostly it's held by Zoom. That's and the pandemic, if anything else, it's taught us that we can do this by Zoom. And I love it because that format allows us to go to Archuleta County and Washington and Steamboat. It's the four corners of Colorado. We need to reach all of those. It's not just a problem up and down the Front Range, but these insidious boards and commissions are everywhere. And in reality, the state of Colorado has several, probably 30 to 50, I think it's upwards now, of commissions as well. And so as a state, you have the opportunity to be on a board or commission at the state level, not just in your county.
I think there's another benefit here too, Kathleen, and you've probably seen this, is for folks that are interested in playing an even bigger role in small government or even state government. This is an opportunity to not only build up experience, but some resume credentials to move forward into that next step.
Absolutely. In fact, I tell people, if you want to run for office, well, why not enter into government at a very low risk place, right? If you are on a board commission, you don't have to run for office. I mean, you don't have to elect. You don't have to be elected. You don't have to raise money. I mean, all of those good things. But if you get on a board or commission, all of a sudden you have the ability to see who the players are. You might be able to build your resume, but you're more likely going to build relationships within the annals of government that could help you along the way to navigate it. You'll learn how to run a meeting. I mean, good God, when was the last time most of us used Robert Rule of Order? I mean,
just at
those
home.
are the kinds. No, it's the Brockler Rule of Order.
That's
is
right.
at home,
There's only
right?
one. There's only one. Dad
That's
loses.
That's right. Okay. But I'm saying we just need the opportunity to rehone our skills. Have you read, a statute recently? Do you understand language? Do you understand all of those things? So why not kind of learn that where it's a little bit lower risk? And, without having to run for office, you can make those mistakes and no one will even notice, right? Or you can gain that insight and allies. And when you decide to run for office, you will have that better leg up. A good example, my friend, Don Sheehan, who I use all the time as my poster child for the local government project. He came to my class many years ago and got on the senior commission in the city of Centennial.
Awesome.
Well, yeah, and he did a great job. He served for 2 years very faithfully, learned everything there was to know about what it meant to be a senior in the Centennial and all of those things. But then one day he decided to run for office. And because he had that experience, because he had that opportunity to make alliances, Don found it a little more easy, not, super easy, but a little more easy to raise money and to get into government. And he's a seated city council member today.
Wow.
And that's what we're trying to do, is build that opportunity, because we just don't have good people to elect, and there is no opportunity
Kathleen,
for us to grow
the
them.
music's going to play and they're going to kick us off. Tell us
Okay.
where folks can go, because I want them to do this.
Sure. It's called thinkfreedom.org, thinkfreedom.org. And on there is the local government banner. Just push that drop-down menu, catch my name and
Thank
phone
you.
number, and I'll be happy to get with you.
Kathleen Chandler, thank you, sister.
You bet.
Talk to you soon. Check it out and stick around one more hour with me and you, 710 KNUS. George Brockler right back with you here at 710 KNUS. Final hour of the show before we turn it over to a guy named Charlie Kirk. Then we go Dennis Prager 1 hour later, 2 hours after that, guy named Gorka. And then at 3, we go live and local with our buddy Deb Flora. And if you have not listened to Deb's show, she just really gets some great interviews there. In fact, tune in, text in, and call her and see if you can. In fact, one of the things, maybe she'll end up letting you call in and ask questions of her guests. She has such tremendous guests out there. And then at 4 o'clock, we get joined by Steffan Tubbs. I know he goes by Steffan, but I think Salem now mandates that we call him Stephen. I think we're required to. We're going to try to get him on this hour as well. It is the 5-year anniversary of Salem's great experiment. Can a news guy make the transition to talk radio? I think the answer is a resounding question mark. No, it's yes, of course. Steffan's been the bomb. We're going to try to get him on as well. Now, listen, a couple updates on some stories that we have, and I want to get back to a conversation because some of the texters here have really piqued my interest on this. One is the massive earthquake, the 7.8 on the Richter scale earthquake in Turkey, and the 7.5 follow-on earthquake. This affects Turkey and, of course, Syria. The death toll is now up over 2,300, according to the Wall Street Journal. Folks, that is such an enormous loss of life. That is incredible. There's a lot more to come on this. I don't think anybody thinks 2,300 is the ceiling in terms of the deaths here. We started the day's show thinking it was going to be 1,500, then 1,600. Now we're up over 2,300. At that pace, we're going to approach perhaps 10,000. I'm making that up because I just don't know. But there was an article I referenced a couple hours ago where they said there's a 31% chance that the death toll goes between 1,000 and 10,000. This thing has incredible pace here. And digging out the rubble, we won't know for a long time. This is a story that isn't just sort of a factual, hey, isn't this traumatic? I do think the follow-on story is, what should America and the West's response be? Because I don't think the world has an obligation from a nation-state standpoint to do something, but from a moral standpoint, I do think we have to do something. Now, listen, we are, oh my gosh, Billy has worked magic right now. We're not going to get to the other topic because really the most important topic that we're going to cover in this particular hour is an anniversary, and it's a big one. 5 years only interrupted by trips to San Diego for reasons no one understands, or a surgery here or there, maybe a hospitalization, but that's it. Steffan Tubbs, thank you. Thank you for joining us on this show.
Hold on a minute. Hey, can you plug in that IV drip one more time, please? George, I'm back at the hospital just because.
Frantically pressing the red opioid button over and over as you brace yourself.
That is just not true.
Buddy,
before we start.
Congratulations. 5 years. It's a big one. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, going into the 6th year today. But I just want to say I had no idea. I actually stepped out of a meeting I'm in right now. So our time is limited. So if you planned on an hour of programming talking about me, you and Billy can go ahead and do that. But I stepped out of a breakfast. Of course, I hear what you said, and man, it's one of the reasons why I'm just so happy to share the airways with you on this station. I was on my phone last night when I get the bulletin that this massive earthquake, and all they show with, like, on your phone, you can see it says 7.8, and my source was the LA Times, and of course my heart stopped for a second, and I'm like,
not
dear
LA.
God, tell me this was not a 7.8 in Los Angeles. And of course, you don't wish anybody to deal with this, but I just wanted to bring this up because it makes my heart feel good. I know it's corny, but we're going to follow this afternoon. Some of the stories already coming out of this region of Lebanon, Turkey, Syria. I think I'm so lockstep with you. We have a moral obligation as Americans, and we always come to the aid. We can't seem to get a Chinese spy balloon down in time, but hopefully we can mobilize. We can mobilize something and efforts, but just a devastating earthquake that I've heard the death toll could easily go over 10,000.
Oh my God.
So we're definitely gonna follow it this afternoon. And George, you know how these stories are. As we speak on a Monday in Denver, Colorado, there are people that are alive that are in rubble. And have you seen some of the YouTube There are people that have cell signals and they're trapped, but they're on and trying to get rescued. So we're going to cover and continue that all day today.
Buddy, that is super traumatic. Now, I know you got to get back into this breakfast. I imagine it's some sort of a product you're being wooed into buying. That's the only reason I can think of.
You know what? That is actually not true. We're talking about it's a breakfast talking about the thing that you're involved with and others at the station, but we can't talk about it yet.
Oh, that's amazing. Yeah, I think I vaguely understand what you're talking about, Stephen. Yeah, I'd be interested to know what information you glean from this breakfast, because that'll be super.
Oh, by the way, and the breakfast, no one connected with Salem Broadcasting is involved in this breakfast.
No, well, that's a plus. Where can you tell us where you're eating so we can go there?
Let's see. It's the Wendy's on Arapahoe
and something in. Yeah, I believe you. Now listen,
right. Those French toast sticks, baby, man, they're so good.
In addition to the balloon and the tragedy in Turkey and Syria, I imagine you're going to spend some of the show doing that sort of 5th anniversary look in the rearview mirror. Couple quick one. For listeners that are out there thinking, what do I get a host on their 5th anniversary? The traditional 5th anniversary gift is wood. Do with that what you will. The flower, of course, is daisy. So, there's some real options there. But I presume you're going to focus a little bit on some of the highs and the lows of the last 5 years.
You got it, brother. I think actually, doesn't Littleton Jewelry, don't they provide and have that exclusive line of wooden daisies?
That's exactly it. By the way, they can do any sort of custom jewelry out there. They're that good.
See?
But can you share with us, without stealing anything away from the great show from 4 to 7 on this channel, can you share with us one unique story that sort of captures some of what has taken place over the last 5 years here?
Oh, God. One. Well, certainly the effort from this radio station to, at least for the time in 2019, to thwart the supervised injection sites. I've never been involved with a radio effort in 3 decades. My 33rd year, I've never been involved with an effort where listeners got so pissed off and followed our lead and we followed their lead to at least at that moment, thwart the supervised injection site bill from going forward. I think we've got a lot of work to do, with others under the dome this legislative session. That was awesome going to with Peter and Mr. Crowley to Vancouver and Seattle. Yeah. I mean, it was amazing. I look at going through missing more work than ever as an adult, going through COVID and coming back after 5 weeks and being in the hospital for a week, and the enormous amount of love and support and the incredible hate. That's something I'll never forget. People wishing me death and all of that.
Really?
It's like, wow.
Hold on.
Oh, come on, brother.
How are they communicating that to you? Were you getting that on these texts over here that I'm looking at?
You want to go back in the archives there, pal? No, Facebook and Twitter and calls. And I've had death threats over the years. And this is just all at KNUS. But I also, one of the other stories, George, that I remember, and sadly it turned, from incredible heroics being saved just because of a radio station to death and fentanyl. We just were facilitating during that bomb cyclone. We had a woman and her family stranded between like Castle Rock and the Springs near Monument, and she'd never heard of KNUS. She's certainly never heard of my name, but it was the only station they could get, and we ended up using our connections and airwaves to help CDOT and the National Guard find this family. And it was great. It was huge. It was like unlike anything I'd ever been involved with. And it all carried out live on the air. And then it was a year ago this month that same woman who helped, that we got this, the help to her. It wasn't me. It was just the fact that we could facilitate, the information. And she sent me a personal Facebook message, George, a year ago this month, and said, "Hey, remember me? I'm Bomb Cyclone. You helped rescue me. Just wanted to let you know that our family is dealing with the tragedy. One of the family members who was in that car that you guys helped us get rescued, she took a half a Percocet and it was laced with fentanyl, and she's dead." And
Lord.
You want to talk about the highs and lows. And so that really pretty much about a year ago, this solidified that what we can do on the radio to try to expose the fentanyl issue and smuggling, we're going to do that. So I know you asked for one thing, but those are just a couple of things.
I think the other thing, and I want to disabuse some of the texters here, that time that you were in the hospital, it is merely coincidental that you claimed to have COVID, but then you returned and you had a six-pack. I mean, there is no way that was liposuction. And I know that that's a rumor going around out there in Facebook, but that is simply not true. That was because of the COVID that he lost all that weight.
Yeah, it truly was. And no, the six-pack may be a fat tire, but no.
Get it while you can. They're changing up the formula,
right?
Steffan, the other thing is, and for folks that don't listen to your show, and I don't know why they don't, maybe it's just their job or something, it's available on podcast. But I think the thing that I always appreciated about you and about Pete on this station, and it's something that other stations used to do, they just don't anymore, and that is make the show about the conversation with the public, the town square aspect of what we do. And frankly, it's what makes us unique. Just nobody else seems to want to do that the way we do it.
Yeah, I don't get it. We all have friends in radio and talk radio and in this business some people, I could not imagine doing a show and not taking any phone calls. I mean,
or the texts or the emails,
or the text. Oh my God,
I'd be bored. I'd be bored doing it, let alone being on the receiving end of it.
No, absolutely. One of the things that when I came over, it's hard to believe. Again, it was like, the technical anniversary was yesterday, but it was February 5th, 2018. I'd never worked anywhere where I could have such easy access because I was a new for so long that I'd never had to worry about, how do I get a phone call? How do I get an email? How do I get a text? And for those of you, there are some, George, that, we've got our listeners who, they've been with the KNUS longer than you and me combined.
Yeah.
But I'm telling you, I wouldn't want to go back and listen to those first few weeks of my show, but I'm so appreciative of our management that, gave, a time that was definitely not the best in my life, give me a shot. And I think we've taken it and we've run with it. I'm proud of what we do from, you in the mornings to, throughout the weekdays and into the weekends. I love it. And I can't wait to start. I can't believe going into the 6th season. And I do promise that we'll have some more stories coming up throughout this week.
Will you have Craig on?
What do you think I'm having breakfast with, you moron?
Listen, if you don't record that and play it.
Hold on a minute. Hey, George.
Hey, man, what's going on?
Well, it's been a while. How come you haven't been calling?
Licensing? I think we're not allowed to.
No. Brian said that I could. Now listen, it is Steven's anniversary, so he has to get back to the breakfast with me. But if you are wondering where I am, I do a podcast and I rip on all of you people all the time. But at the end of the day, we're all still friends. Hey, Trish,
oh my sweet God! I'm presume now that this will generate not only a ton of hateful texts and postings on Twitter, but potentially a lawsuit. I don't know what just happened there, but Craig, thank you for taking time to be on the show.
Hey, I'll give you back with George. Just remember, I did want you to be governor, but
that was in the past. Oh yeah, this is the way in the past. Stephen, thank you so much for being on this morning. Congratulations on the 5 years. Sorry it couldn't be 6. I'm kidding. We will be tuning in. We'll be tuning in from 4 to 7. Thanks, man.
Thank you, Colonel. Bye.
Enjoy the breakfast. Hey, that's Steffan Tubbs. He goes by Steffan, but no one else calls him that here at the station. He's on from 4 to 7. I want to do a couple things here before I invite you to call in and have this conversation that we started a couple hours ago about something important that's going on. But I need to tell you about our good buddy Gaye Ribble and the Empower Home team. Listen, I pay attention to the real estate market for just weird reasons. I have for years. I like to see what's going on. I get some emails from time to time about houses I think someday I'll be able to live in or move into when the kids are all gone, that kind of stuff. And man, when you look at interest rates, when you look at what the Fed did with their 1/4 point interest rate hike, and they're saying, hey, we're going to continue to do this until we blunt the economy, because as you know, 500 jillion jobs were created last month, which is some sort of a record in terms of unemployment. That doesn't make you feel good if you're trying to blunt inflation. You wonder to yourself, listen, if I had to sell, could I? If I needed to buy, should I? And then also, what can I do with this market right now? You don't need to navigate those crazy waters by yourself. You need to find the expert out there in the real estate market, and that's Gaye Ribble with Empower Home. The whole team is fantastic. Couple things you ought to know when you think to yourself, should I pick up the phone and call them just to have the conversation? You should. They'll talk you off the ledge. They'll put you in the place that you want to be when you navigate this thing. $30,000 on average, they sell your house for more. Who doesn't want an extra 30 grand? They also have all the buyers, 14,000 plus, just waiting for your home to be listed with them. They also have great things to help you that don't cost you a thing. Home seller workshops to empower you. They're free. EmpowerHomeFreeWorkshops.com. EmpowerHomeFreeWorkshops.com. They also have these great incentives to get you to try to sell. If you need to sell quickly, their Sold in 5 program, kaboom. 6.1% more for your home when you go through the Sold in 5 program. I don't know why you're waiting. If you're even thinking about it, have the conversation with the experts out there who will put your mind at ease and make your wallet a little bit fatter. 833-301-SOLD, 833-301-SOLD, or GayeHasTheBuyers.com. Gaye is how you spell it. GayeHasTheBuyers.com. Now listen, I want to continue a conversation because, and I did this before Stephen called in. We have this balloon issue that we started talking about there in the 7 o'clock hour, and it generated a lot of text and some phone calls about what to do with this. As you know, there was a Chinese balloon that was first announced by the Biden administration late last week, but only after civilians, regular people like us, like you and me, spotted it in Montana and it was going to break. And then and only then did the Biden administration come forward and say, hey, everybody, something you're about to hear from people, not the government, is we're tracking this surveillance. You can call it a spy balloon from the Chinese. It's drifting over middle America and it's going to keep on going. Just wanted to let you know. That's engendered so many questions. And I've got a bunch too. I mean, my position was, how in the world could we have not known about this when it launched from China? And if not, how are we going to keep it from happening in the future? That's one big one. 2, if we did know about it, and I suspect with all the satellites we have, we did, how come we didn't shoot it down when it got into American airspace? And I presume that's the same kind of 12 miles out from the Aleutian Islands. And that's what Senator Tom Cotton from Arkansas said on Fox News yesterday. Why don't we bring this thing down over the Aleutian Islands? Love to know the answer to that. I don't think KGP is going to be armed with that information today, but I'm kind of excited to hear what happens with the questions. As you know, we waited for it to drift over America and perhaps complete its mission until it got to a place that, and I understand this, where it was safe to bring it down where no American lives or property were at risk. I appreciate that, but there's got to be a balancing here. Is there no place between Montana and North Carolina that is so devoid of life or property that we couldn't have tried to bring it down earlier? I don't know the answer to that. But then we had some texters text in and say, this really isn't a big deal, George. You're making too big a deal out of this. This was just a Chinese surveillance balloon that can't possibly grab up any more information than is already available by satellites. Is this a big nothing burger? Have I blown this out of proportion? Is this just more of this right-wing pull your hair out crazy talk? Because it doesn't feel like it to me. I mean, this feels like something serious. And the other part of this that we got to get to the bottom of is, did this happen during the Trump administration? And if so, how many times? Did he know about it? And if he did, why didn't he do something about it? Because you feel like this is the kind of thing that is right in Trump's wheelhouse. Like, had this happened, dude would have stood up and said, oh no, Xi Jinping, and he would have brought it down, even if it was over a school. I mean, that's probably a little extreme, but you know what I'm talking about. This is a guy that would have shot that sucker down in Montana. Did he know about it? And if so, what action did he take or not take? Now, he denies it. His national security officials deny it, but there are reports that is up to 3 of these things transversed the United States in some way back during the Trump administration. And if he didn't know, how is it possible he didn't know? This is the kind of oversight I want from our Congress. 303-696-1971. I want answers. Hunter Biden, yes, it's important. I get all that stuff. And I think that can happen concurrently. But I don't know how the House hasn't stood up a committee right now to ask the questions, what's going on? How many times has this happened? Why did we only find out after regular old Americans were going to announce it? And how are we going to keep this? And what are the ramifications, by the way? What do we do to punish China? Or are we so freaked out that they may do something, that they've said they're going to retaliate? Do we have balloons over China? Are they going to shoot down our balloons? I mean, what the hell's going on? 303-696-1971. Tony, you stay on. I promise we come back. You're the first thing we go to. It's George Brockman on the George Show, 710 KNUS.
Upside down in this highway town before we met, the leather red, and I just miss the tender-hearted kiss. Sometimes I guess I'm such a mess, 'cause this timepiece is spinning and your snapshot is missing, and I watch you go, because this timepiece is spinning and your snapshot is missing, and I watch you go, wait and you'll see my love, and I will be somewhere, I bet, inside my head, and I just wish for one last kiss, a final breath. I'm such a mess, 'cause this timepiece is spinning and your snapshot is missing, and I watch you go, because this timepiece is spinning and your snapshot is missing, and I watch you go, here to save or run away. I fall apart tonight's the day. You wanna go, we're running out of time. 'Cause this timepiece is spinning and your snapshot is missing, and I watch you go, because this timepiece is spinning and your snapshot is missing, and I watch you go, miss. I'm such a mess. 'Cause this timepiece is spinning and your snapshot is missing. And I watch you go. I watch you go. Because this timepiece is spinning and your snapshot is missing. And I watch you go. I watch you go.
George Brockler right back with you here on 710 KNUS. True to my word and to honor the patience of caller Tony. Tony from Littleton, what do you think, sir?
Hey, thanks again for bringing me back on.
Thanks for calling me back, man. I'm sorry. We just ran out of time. I didn't want to give you like 10 seconds and be like, quick, Tony, say it.
No,
Yeah.
I appreciate that. I appreciate that. Look, here the bottom line is this. I don't think we're ever going to hear, not in the immediate, in the coming year or two, regardless of how many investigations, we're not going to hear much more from the military or the administration than they didn't learn a whole lot going over us that they wouldn't have learned from spy satellites, number one. Two, while the risk may have been minimal, had those buses come down on something, that would have been a bigger disaster we'd be talking about today.
True. You're right about that, Tony. If it had come down on a farm or a person or a school, we'd have gone nuts. You're right.
We'd be going crazy about it. And so they let it go to the ocean and then dropped it. Now we're going to try and get what we can, do what we can to reverse engineer and try to understand it. But there's bigger issues on the table. And I think we might be talking about the wrong thing when we should be focusing on, she wanted this meeting. Xi Jinping wanted this meeting as badly as we did. You think about, we're criticizing our president right now for being weak. I mean, that's the whole thing. He's weak. He should have shot it down. And why didn't he? And the Chinese expect that kind of rhetoric to come from our politics. They understand our politics. We understand their politics. But you think about, from his position, the things that are causing him anxiety right now. And that is Japan, with Biden announcing their militarization, the South Koreans, Australians, the U.S. and Japan talking about joint military exercises, the announcement that we're rebuilding the Philippine base, the moratorium on high-tech exports to China, causing them economic problems, if nothing else, moving of chip manufacturing to the United States, another big check mark for China.
Well, so, listen, all the things you're saying make sense to me in terms of creating pressure for Xi Jinping and the communists in charge of the country. But does that mean that, how does that make you view this balloon episode? Did we mishandle it? Are we not treating it seriously enough?
No, I think there's I think there's something else going on. And I think a lot of experts around the world are saying the same thing. And that is, he wanted the meeting. He had no reason at all to send that balloon over us. And so that's issue one. Why would he do that on the eve of a meeting that he desperately wants?
Why do you think he did it?
Calm down our tension. Well, some of the experts, and I would not have caught this. I was asking that question, but then I started hearing answers. We got two different statements out of the Chinese in the last 24 hours. One came from their military, and their military said something to the effect that we reserve the right to
respond in kind,
to take
basically.
recourse, however respond in kind. Xi Jinping and the government itself made the statement, we have the right to defend the manufacturers, essentially, of the balloon, the company behind the balloon. And those are two entirely different statements, which is giving rise to the idea, and this again, not me. I mean, I don't understand the Chinese the way these experts do. They're saying it's starting to sound like it was either a hardline group that maybe launched that or the military that launched that with the intention of trying to have that meeting go to hell in a handbasket. It was obvious. It went right over the United States. You could see it from the ground. It was too obvious. And they're saying it may not even be Ping himself that did this. and he's
That's so
actually
hard
got
to
a battle
imagine.
going
That's just so hard to imagine.
Well, as they say, as these experts say, he's got his own problems in his country right now. His third term was outside the boundaries. He's got hardliners that do not want to have a peaceful relationship with the United States. He wants to have at least these experts are saying he understands why he needs to have it. Now, think about this. We're observing what they're saying through their social media. They're observing what we're saying. They're listening to our radio. We're listening to them. He made an announcement 7 days ago that he wants his military to be ready to invade Taiwan by 2027, right? Something on that order. All of this is food for their own people to show that we're being strong. What have they done? They've been furious. He's been sending out furious statements that we shot it down. And he knows we were going to shoot it down. He knows that we were going to shoot it down, but he's doing that for the consumption of his public. And he knows that we're our side. Over here, we got people jumping onto the press saying our president wasn't strong enough. And you know what? He's, for the most part, ignoring it. All they need to know is, well, that's what Biden's got to respond to, is what his public pressure is. But they're far more concerned about what Biden is really doing and the heat that's on them now. And if I can take just another second with this started back in Obama's administration. You remember the urgency when out of the blue, he said, we have to pivot to the East. With hard power and soft power, we've got to get out of the Middle East and we've got to pivot to the East. And then TPP was that soft power initiative that we thought was a slam dunk because Republicans are so into it until Trump said, no, we're not into it. And then we killed it. So the soft power initiative, China dodged a bullet. So Trump put some tariffs on some products. That was minor compared to what they dodged with TPP and us bundling up with 12 Pacific Rim nations. So now we're kind of into a hard power game. And one last comment. I mean, all I'm asking you to do is be thinking about this as you're processing this in your own mind, and you get guests on that talk about this. The last issue is, this is all about Ukraine. This is all about Ukraine.
You think this is about Ukraine?
It's all about Ukraine.
How so?
Everything's about Ukraine right now. China, Russia has dug in and said this is existential to them. We have basically said the same thing. This is existential. In fact, this reminds me of 1940. Germany was invaded, was bombing.
But just make the connection from the balloon thing. And I've given you a ton of time, Tony, but I want to get Gary and everybody else on it.
It's the same type of environment that we were in 1940. And in this case, with the U.S. is saying, and the West, that's China's watching how we united the West to fight against Russia without putting any boots on the ground yet. We've managed to fight Russia. If they want to invade Taiwan, they're looking at the lesson and saying, can the United States round up the world again to defend Taiwan? They're watching it. On one hand, they want us to fail. On the other hand, they absolutely do not want Russia to use a nuclear weapon. And they probably believe, just like most experts, that Russia might use a nuclear weapon. And then all bets are off.
Tony,
all bets are off if that happens.
Tony, I appreciate the phone call. It's provocative. There's some things that I don't necessarily agree with, but I'll tell you, and for folks that are listening, I'll let Tony go long here because he had been on hold for so long before. And I thought, man, I'm going to reward the callers who are patient and wait on there. And I thought Tony had some good insights in there. I don't think this has to do with Ukraine. This doesn't strike me as Ukraine related, but maybe I'm just too dim to see it. I promise we're going to get to Gary, and Tony's line is open at 303-696-1971, and everybody else on hold and some of the texts that are coming in as well. But before I get to Gary, I do want to tell you about somebody cool who's starting to advertise on this show, and something I really hadn't been paying close attention to. I see all the same ads you do about regenerative medicine, and I hear about all these things. But at the end of the day, when you're talking about where do I turn, who do I go to, where can I have the best conversation that costs me nothing to decide whether or not this is for me, two big things to remember. QC Kinetix and this phone number, 303-900-8986. And I'm going to give it a couple more times. The folks at QC Kinetix are engaged in this regenerative medicine thing that is going to save you from going under the knife. You got joint pain. You got some other kinds of things in these tendons in the parts that tend to go bad when the warranty runs out on you and me. And I'm talking knees and ankles. And I'm still freaked out that I'm going to end up with my dad's knees, who I think he's had at least one, maybe two replacements, but definitely had both knees scoped before my age. I don't want to do that. But elbows, shoulders, ankles, all those things that limit your quality of life because they impact the movements that we just take for granted every day. Getting up, walking around, grabbing things, moving your shoulders, going upstairs, going downstairs. The folks that can get you back on your feet the quickest, because the recovery time is so much less when you don't have to get cut open. That's these folks right here. We're talking no downtime for this. QC Kinetix has an amazing treatment option. It's now available for folks just like us. And if you're interested in ending that joint pain without going into surgery, yikes, these are the folks to call. Get a free consultation with a local medical professional, 303-900-8986, 303-900-8986. When you call them, just tell them that you heard about them on our show and say, listen, I'm intrigued. Tell me more, educate me. And my guess is you may take that next step, and you should. Going right back to the phone lines. Gary, you're on 710 KNUS. Gary, what do you think?
All right, George. Yeah, it's incredible. The theories that you hear about all of this. You know, I'm the kind of person where, you know, I'm patient. I know talk radio wants to look at things that are unknown. You know, when we examine the payload, we'll know exactly what was going on. But, you know, in some ways,
will we know? You think they're going to tell? I mean, my concern is if it's really bad, they obfuscate. If it's a big nothing burger, like some of the texters here have sent in, that's what we'll hear. Yeah, it was just weather. I just don't think we're going to hear.
Yeah, maybe not. But you know, this whole situation is similar to the documents. You remember when all the hoo-ha about Trump having the documents, and then when they found that Pence and Biden had the documents, it became clear that there's a systemic problem with the classification of documents and the control of those. Right? It's not one party or the other. It's both. And same with this balloon nonsense. I've done a little internet research on the 3 balloon incidents during the Trump administration.
Yeah.
And right now, Trump, the line is that they didn't learn about them during the Trump administration. They learned about them after it. Well, that's just a lot of nonsense. But if they didn't, then it's really the same question, same situation as the documents. There seems to be a systemic problem with, you know, when do we report balloon sightings? What do we do about them? And there needs to be a policy change whereby we say, you know, immediately upon discovery, if they're not over land, that we destroy them or something like that.
Could this be, Gary, could this be a trial balloon, if you forgive the pun, on two bases? One, I mean, is there a way to say, listen, we want to see what the Americans will do to react to this, because we could, and I'm just making stuff up here, we could float over an EMP, an electromagnetic pulse, and wipe out a whole bunch of stuff, a grid here, a grid there. I don't know. But is that possible? Or maybe it's a trial balloon to test to see what will President Biden do? What will his response be, especially on the eve of this meeting that they're desperate to have? Each side wants to have a reset. You think they're pushing the envelope, or is this all just coincidental?
I don't think they're trying to push the envelope, and I would ask the same question when they floated the balloons during the Trump administration. But the reason why is China is dependent on the United States to help their economy come out of COVID. So the last thing they want to do is interrupt negotiations and interactions. So I don't buy the idea that they were testing the Biden administration. That's just the Republicans trying to blame everything bad on the Biden administration.
Well, so is this a big deal or not a big deal?
To me, it was a bigger deal that when I put my car keys in my ignition this morning, that my car started so I could get to work.
Man, it flummoxes me because I don't understand. And I want to know more about it. I mean, do you want the last question, Gary, do you want the House to convene some sort of one of these, I don't know, committee investigative things, oversight to find out what happened under the prior administrations, whether it's Obama, Trump, or anyone else, and what happened here? Or is it like, I'm just not that interested?
No, I like your thought that if they open it up, and I think they should look at what happened under all administrations and try to come up with a policy so that going forward, we know exactly what should be done.
I also think we get to know, right? Like we deserve to know, especially when you have President Trump come out and say, I'd have shot this thing down. They'd have never done this if I'd have known about it. Well, then, okay, did it happen and he didn't know about it? If that's possible, who in the hell gets to withhold information from the President of the United States? Because that's a concern too. I mean, I don't want, listen, I have my own concerns about the current occupant of the White House, but the idea that different agencies out there are making decisions to withhold information from the commander in chief, that's something that's got to end yesterday. That just can't be.
No, I agree. And I think it should be completely transparent to the public. So we're on the same page with that.
Gary, thanks for the phone call, man. Good luck, man. And we'll hear from you again. Another texter coming in. Interesting discussion, but everything is not about Ukraine. I agree with that. I didn't see Tony's connection there. Here's one. Have you asked why Biden didn't know until we knew? Trump's national security guys said they were never told. I think John Ratcliffe is a credible person. You sound a little fixated on Trump. Just like Peter, Billy seems to be influential. I'm not a Trump fan. I want to say, this is Marsha H. from Highlands Ranch. I don't understand. I don't feel like I'm fixated on Trump. What I'm fixated on is what presidents knew about this. If it happened, what action did they take or did they not take? And that last thing I talked about with Gary is legit, man. If we were withholding information from Trump's national security advisors and Trump himself, that's a huge problem in the running of the government, because love him or hate him, whoever we elect to be president of the United States should not have anything ever kept from them that takes place under the executive umbrella. Not a single thing. I don't believe in this plausible deniability stuff that took place. And that's a reference to 87's Iran-Contra hearings, as you recall. I don't believe in that. I believe in ultimate accountability, and the only way to ensure that is to make sure that they have ultimate access to all the information. So I think we need to get to the bottom of that. Whether it's good or bad for Trump really shouldn't be relevant to the conversation. 303-696-1971 is the number. Steve, I promise we'll get to you after a break. It's the last one. George Brockler, George Show, 710 KNUS.
Want to take your favorite radio station wherever you go? Well, now there's an app for that. No matter where you are, stream your favorite shows. Tap the app to listen to podcasts. Talk back to your favorite local hosts.
At the tone, leave a message.
Call the show. Set your alarm. Enter contests and win prizes. All in the palm of your hand. Available now for iOS and Android devices in the App Store or Google Play. And best of all, it's free. Download today. Want to take you
We're back for the final segment before Chuck Kirk takes over. Some texts coming in here, and we read them. You send them. George, maybe the three-letter agencies did know and didn't tell Trump. Chucky Schumer's admonition that the intel agencies had, quote, 6 ways to exact revenge comes to mind. That's echoed here in another one. Hey, George, I just read that Trump's administration didn't tell him. I don't know how true that is, but Representative Waltz says that the old DOD told him trying to spy balloons crossed us during Trump years. And I'm sorry, I'm doing my best to sound it out here, but General Mattis did not tell Trump, thought he was too aggressive. Now, listen, if that's real, that is a huge problem. And I have heard things like this in the past, that General Mattis may have withheld certain information. That is not right. That cannot stand, even if he thinks what he's doing is better for America. That's too bad, man. The commander-in-chief is the ultimate authority. I can't imagine what he would do if a subordinate commander withheld information from him because they thought he'd make the wrong decision. My guess is that person's career is over and they face potential court-martial. That would be really frustrating if that were true. But don't you want to get to the bottom of that? Don't you want to know whether or not that's true? I do. Going back to the phone line, Steve, you're on 710 KNUS. Steve, what do you think?
Yeah, George, the previous 2 callers, they're just trying to spin it. You've got a Chinese weather balloon that can maneuver. It can actually maneuver.
How does it maneuver? I tried to picture that in my head. How does that giant balloon go from left to right and front to back and all that?
They said they have propellers on it.
Propellers on it, okay.
So they kept out of Russian airspace yet. They came into ours. We should have shot it down immediately. You can't tell me that the Chinese weren't transmitting all that information, and they were going over specific military installations. And then Biden waits to shoot it down after they already have all the information. And even if they do find...
Steve, can you tell me, again, the propeller thing is an important fact. Where did you get that? Because I want to go see it.
Oh, what's that?
The fact that it had propellers and it could maneuver. I want to go find that. Where did you find it?
From Breitbart or
Breitbart? Okay. And why do you think that they just continued on in the path they took instead of, they had to know they were being observed because it was international news? Why didn't they take some sort of evasive action or go somewhere else?
Well, because you got our president of the United States beholding to him. He's got over $60 million to the Pennsylvania, his institute in Pennsylvania. And I mean, the Chinese got so much stuff on him.
Steve, is it your position then that he was facilitating their collection of information against Americans because of whatever this $60 million is donated to UPenn?
Yeah, Joe Biden would sell us out for it. He would allow 335 million Americans to die rather than being.
You think so? Really? What gives you that thought?
Yeah. Well, one, he's senile, and everything's about him.
Why did he shoot it down at all?
Well, public pressure. He had to do something, but he shot it down after the fact. The horses left the barn, cat's out of the bag. I mean, they've already got their information. You can't tell me they weren't transmitting that to their.
Is that information better than the information that they can get from the satellites that are definitely flying over us?
I don't know. There might be something that the weather balloon, or the fact that, like a lot of people were saying, they can do an EMP. And if we don't do anything about it.
That does worry me quite a bit. Let me ask you this. If this thing is maneuverable, why not, if you're China and dang, they're going to have to do something, why not just hover over a metropolitan area and dare the U.S. to shoot it down over the metropolitan area?
Because the military installations are more important.
No, but I mean, once you think you're in jeopardy, right? Like you're like, oh, crap, they see it. It's on TV. Let's make it hard for them to make a decision and let's put it over people.
The thing is, they were over military installations, especially in Montana. I don't know if you've been to Montana recently, but
not recently, but I've been there.
There's hardly anybody in Montana.
That's true of Wyoming. That's true of a lot of places, which makes me wonder why we didn't take the risk and shoot it down there. But my hope is that Congress does something about this. Like when we're talking oversight, yes, there's some importance to finding out about the Hunter Biden stuff, but this to me is much more important.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's our national security. And the fact that we didn't do anything. So don't they have a couple other balloons that are heading our way?
I have heard that there's another one that's already over. I don't know if it was Mexico or Latin America. I'd have to check, but I've heard that this is not an unusual thing. Like this thing has gone on and it continues to go on. That's concerning. I really do need answers. And by the way, not KGP answers, not Austin answers from DOD. I really do want to hear the President of the United States on this.
And what's to keep them from sending out biological canisters?
I don't know, man. And it's such a good question. I don't know, but it's a fascinating issue, and I appreciate your thoughts on it, Steve. I'm not as convinced as you are that this is some conspiracy. Look, it is a big deal to accuse someone, as some of the callers did in the past, of being a traitor, especially the President of the United States. I can disagree with him all day long. I can have my questions about his intellectual acuity and all those things, but to call someone a traitor and being willing to sell out all the Americans for some donation to the University of Pennsylvania, I don't know, man. I can't bring myself to get there with we have made it so that anyone that disagrees with us has to now be our enemy and a threat to the country. I can't get there, but I love the context. Listen, tomorrow we're going to be back. You keep the texts coming, you keep the phone calls coming, and I'll keep the conversation going. It's George Brockler, George Show, 710 KNUS.